couple of the keys are in places that are different to.
Oh, okay.
Weird because I thought we'd kind of got an agreement over the last 40 years about keyboards. You know that like
Yes, about where they're laid out and how they work. Yes.
yeah, and then someone brings one out and just swaps a couple of things, even just like two keys. It completely throws you when you
Well,
use
I
it.
mean, like it's been basically the same layout since like typewriter days, hasn't it?
Yes, it
So
has. Yeah,
you know,
yes, it's
changing
bizarre
it
when it
now
changes.
is an odd move and a very corporate one, I've got to say. You know,
Yeah, it's that thing where someone wants to make a name for themselves, so they'll like, oh, I'll.
or
You know, you
they
get
have to justify their positions, right?
yeah, like when you get a
That's what it
manager,
is.
the best thing they could possibly do would be to just let everything keep it as it is and just keep it running. But they don't want to do that because it don't look good for the CV. So they invent
Right.
some new thing that's a load of crap and,
Yeah. Oh,
and doesn't.
my job is, you know, what they don't want. It's someone looking at their position and thinking, well, why do we employ them? You know, why are we
Yeah.
paying them X amount per year when they don't really do anything meaningful?
Well, then they can
It's
put on the CV that they've altered this and they've initialized this thing and they've introduced this new. Whether or not any of that did any good, don't matter. That's not on the
or was
CV.
even
But
like meaningful in any particular way, right?
yeah, it's definitely got to be one of them. But yeah, it's
It's
a bizarre design.
it's so endemic in our sort of our job market as well, isn't it? It's so
Yeah,
endemic.
it is. Yeah, it is. There's so many roles where you think you could literally leave this company and it wouldn't. Nobody would
It would
notice. No,
make a
no one actually doing the job.
You know what it is, ultimately what it is. I mean, it's it may be an overanalysis, but it's a symptom of late stage capitalism, isn't it? Where we have this situation where there are not enough meaningful and significant positions for the number of people there are. So
Yeah.
this notion that everyone has to work, well, no, they don't. No, they don't. There's
No.
just not enough meaningful jobs for people to do, you know?
No, but the idea that maybe we could introduce a system where everyone just has enough money, and if you choose to work, then there's no way they'd allow that. But simultaneously, they keep inventing things that are removing more and more actual
Right.
jobs. So the two things don't equate. You can't have the
No.
two things that you can't
Right. I mean,
expect everyone to work and then put all this money into stuff like AI and whatnot.
exactly that. I mean, it is going to ultimately come to a crunch point, which is going to drive the change of our societies just by, it's going to have to, right? There's going to be
Well,
no
yeah, because
choice.
so many companies only exist because people have the money to use them. I mean, if you think
Right.
like Jeff Bezos, for instance, his entire company exists because people buy shit that they want
Yeah.
from his
Yeah.
company. If people don't have disposable income,
Mhm.
Amazon ceases to exist
Right.
because
Yeah.
no one's paying for the TV channel, no one's buying stuff from the website.
Yeah.
What's his company providing exactly? So, and it's the same for most like mega billionaires. They all do
Yeah.
things that aren't, they're not in charge of things that are essential on it. They're in charge
No.
of things that exist because people have disposable income. So if people don't,
Exactly.
their company ceases to exist in the form that they do. So
It's that
yeah,
whole capitalist thing of blow torching the base of the iceberg that you're sitting on top of, right?
yes, it is. Yeah,
And
like
thinking that you're going to be okay, you're not going to drown. Yeah, it's the
yeah.
most bizarre delusion. And it's actually coming quicker than I think most of us thought it would. And yeah, it's happening now.
Well, I think what's going to sink a lot of the sort of sort of bigger thoughts and plans about AI is just how much processing power it actually requires,
Mhm.
both like in terms of environmentally the damage that
Yeah.
that does, but also like just in terms of the infrastructure required to
Yeah.
set that up. It's just not sustainable.
No.
And
And it's
and
shit.
and
I mean, that's the other thing,
yeah,
right?
it
It's
is.
just
It's
not
not even
very
that good,
good.
is it? No, no. So I
Yeah.
think my prediction for this, as someone who works in software, is
Yeah.
that you'll have a couple of years where companies sort of like lean, not a couple of years, maybe 5 or 6, where
Yeah.
companies lean heavily into it, thinking that it'll replace this, that, and the other.
Yeah.
That it's very costly and doesn't replace that and the other, and is a big shit, and then we'll sort
Yeah.
of dialing back from it. I think
Yes.
that's the way it's most likely to go, because it's going to have to, because
Yeah, there's also, I mean, there's the public backlash as well, of course. It already has a terrible rep. You know, already the feeling amongst just general people is that it's bad. Yeah. To the point whereby there are people who will boycott certain companies if they use AI. And, you know, absolutely, if they're using AI to to use images and whatnot, AI created imagery and whatnot, then yeah, because it's theft, it's piracy, you know,
it
it's
looks
ultimately
cheap.
just piracy, you know. Also, I
If
mean,
you're a
there's that, but
if you see a
it looks
company
uncanny.
it
It
does, but I
looks
mean,
wrong. It
if
looks
you're a
wrong.
company whose adverts or whatever on social media are AI, it just makes you look cheap. So you can't even be asked to pay an artist. Then
Yeah,
I should use your business, but you can't even be bothered to pay an artist
absolutely.
to do your
And
advert.
yeah, and
You
not
know?
only that, but I'm going to steal from other artists, right? Because
Yeah.
that's what AI ultimately
Well,
does, you know.
this is a personal sort of grievance of mine with it, is that it's wrongly named. It's not AI.
Yes,
It's
it's
not
not
AI.
AI.
It's basically, if I right, let's say you take all your toys when you were a kid, right? All the
Mhm.
toys you already have, and you chuck them into a toy box, and then you take out any two at random. So you might have Optimus Prime and Donatello from the Ninja Turtles. You've
Yeah,
never played with Optimus Prime and Donatello from the Ninja Turtles together, so you've got these two things out in a new combination. But that's all it's ever going to do. All you're ever going to
mhm.
do is pay with that toy box is take out things in some combination that may not have been done before. But
Right.
nothing new is ever going to come out. It's never going to make,
Right.
you're never going to take out a new toy. It's only ever going to be ones that are already in there. And that's basically what AI is. It's
That's
not,
very
it's not,
interesting because
it's not AI. It's not
no,
making anything new. You're never
no,
going to get some weird sort of, like, okay, so when you switch on Netflix and there's some new generic like action film that just feels like
uh
50 things you've seen before but stuck together in a
yeah,
combination. It's like Die Hard, but this time it's on a plane, that kind of
mhm,
thing. AI could probably write you a script for something like that, but it's never going to write you a Twin Peaks. it's
no,
it's never going to, it's something that's completely different that comes out of nowhere and people think, holy shit, that's new, and then
no,
everyone else starts writing stuff like that. It's incapable of that because
yeah,
it's wrongly named. It is not artificial intelligence. It is, give me a load of shit and I'll throw something back at you that's a combination of
yes.
those things. That's what it is, but it's not actually artificial intelligence.
No, it's an algorithm machine, isn't it? That's ultimately what it is. It's taking other things that other people, that actual people have created, and throwing them together. That's
Yeah,
all. That's all it can do. It
yeah, that's
doesn't
all it
have
can
the
ever
human
do.
element, you know,
No,
and
and
therefore
it's
it
not
can't
possible
produce
to do
art.
it.
Like by definition, it can't produce art. It's not possible for it to produce art. It can produce images, yeah, absolutely, it can produce images, but that images are not art. Like you said, it's in a closed system. It's operating in a closed system, and is therefore prey to entropy. You know, it's ultimately going to devolve in and of itself. Yeah.
Well, there's already, you see this. It's quite funny. There's that thing about with ghost internet, isn't there? But you
Mm.
already see that where, like, on a YouTube video or something, there's like a bot comment responding to another bot comment responding
Mhm.
to another bot comment, and you think none of these are real people.
None of these are real, and they're getting easy to
Nobody
spot, aren't they? They're
nobody
getting much
really
easier
is.
to spot.
Yeah, well, nobody really is interacting with this because everyone can spot it. So
Mhm.
it's not even achieving its purpose, which is to fool people into thinking these are real comments. It's not even
Right.
doing that.
Well, you can definitely tell them, sort of, for example, on Facebook, because they're all towing very particular political and ideological lines. Obviously, they're all very, very right wing. They're all very pro Trump. They're all very blah, 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 blah. And when you go and look at the profiles, it's very clear they're not real. It's
Yeah.
very clear they're not real. Um, so that also identifies them. And therefore, people are just not going to engage with them.
No, I know it sounds like sort of blindly optimistic, but based on actual evidence and actual logic of this, I don't think it's going to be the big game changer that people think it will.
No,
Because it can't be, because it can't do what people think it can.
no.
It will never reach the stage people will think it will. It will have a few years where your
Mhm.
CEOs wanting to make themselves more money will
Yeah,
invest in it and will get rid of people thinking that can do the job, and it'll all go to shit and it'll prove quite conclusively that it can't, and then they'll
yeah,
have to sort of sheepishly get rid of those CEOs and start hiring people back. It's
yeah.
one of them. That's
It's like
like there was that thing. I remember this because I was impacted by this. Like over 10 years ago, there was when offshoring first became a thing. When companies decided that, oh look, we can get someone with no qualifications for like a pittance to do your job in India. So they offshored it all, and then all them come to save money on salaries. And oh, look at us, we give ourselves a big bonus. And then all those companies started losing money because people hated having to ring up and speak to India. And now it's like a point of pride that when companies advertise, they're like, and our UK call centres.
Yes, of course.
And it's like it didn't work out the way they thought, and they've had to sheepishly walk it back. And I think AI is going to be a very similar path. And at the moment, we're at that point where everyone, well, not everyone, the CEOs of places think it's going to be great, but it's really not. And 10 years from now, it'll be back to being. Do you remember when people started using AI for a bit? I think that's how it's going to go, to be honest.
I think you're probably right. I think my fear is that it will take a disaster people to start for it to have, to start receding culturally. So some fucking idiot CEO or company will start using it to like determine train signals or something like that.
I was just going to say something like that. Yeah.
Or as we've seen when you in recent days, when you remove the human element, flight paths or things like that, right? That would be my guess. I mean, actually, we've already seen a microcosm of it because of Twitter.
Yeah.
Look at what happened to Twitter. When that fucking Nazi cunt. Excuse me, guys, but I hate. I want him. I'm not even going to say it because I'll probably get arrested. But you know what needs to happen to him, and you all know, right? When he comes wading in with his jack boots into Twitter and fires practically everyone who keeps the fucking site running. And what happens to it? It becomes this unworkable cesspool, right?
Yeah. And everyone left it.
Yeah.
So like it doesn't make the money
actually,
that it once did. It didn't,
I mean, that's a combination of factors, actually. It's not just that element. It's the fact that, like, these billionaires, particularly him, because he's like the most toxic of a toxic archetype, right? Yeah. When they enter an ecosystem, however, small it might happen to be, they utterly pollute it. They destroy everything they touch because they haven't got any expertise. They've got the money. They've been born.
They don't know how to do anything else. They don't know how to do anything else. There's actually, as is often the case, The Simpsons already covered this. There is a great example of this with Mr. Burns, where he decides to take an active hand in running his company for the first time, because all he's done for a long time is sort of sit back and let that place make money, which is what he should do because he knows fuck all about it. But when he decides, do you know what, I'm going to start making decisions myself, and he does, but he's surrounded by yes men who are just like, yes, that's a great idea, Mr. Burns. And he bankrupts the company in about a week.
Yes, I remember that episode.
Yeah. And it's like, yes, because he doesn't know anything about running a nuclear power plant.
Right. And people like Musk
just sit there and let it make money. That's what he should be doing.
I mean, the thing about people like Musk is he is such a vacuum of identity. He is like a person. He's like a ghost wearing a human suit. There is nothing inside of him. There's no identity. There's no sense of self. And he has spent his entire life, when you look back across what he's actually done with his existence, trying to insist that he has this, that he's this. He's used his money and the PR that buys him to put out masks of identity, to project out the culture. Oh, I'm this futurist tech bro who's going to get us to Mars. I'm this genius who's going to save the environment. When in fact, he's made nothing, done nothing, and everything he's touched has turned to shit. I mean, literally everything. Every company he's ever touched has been desolated, completely desolated by his ego, his narcissism, and his inability to be told no. He's a spoiled brat that's arrested at that stage of development. That's what he is. There's nothing else to him. And any challenge to that, he reacts like a child, with temper, you know? It's the most amazing thing.
I don't know, maybe I'm just completely lacking in ego, but I've said before, I will never understand these billionaires like him who make so many decisions based on their own pride and stuff. Why not just sit back and enjoy your money?
Just
You could
enjoy
literally
it.
do anything. Like when you think
Right.
anything, you get up tomorrow morning, George. Anything
Yeah.
you think, oh, wouldn't it be
Right.
nice if blah? You could just do.
You could just do it.
You could just do it. You could just what? So why wouldn't you do that? Why would
I
you be
know.
so intent on spreading so much misery? And I don't get it. I just don't
Why
understand.
would you like be on a beach somewhere or exploring
Yeah,
somewhere?
why would you get
or-
involved in politics of all things? Why
I
would
know.
you? Yeah, the
It's 'cause
most
there's nothing
miserable,
else, right?
horrible landscape in the world. Why wouldn't you
Well,
just get up and go, I might go to Caribbean today, and then you
yeah.
just go? Why?
Just jet
Why?
there, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. Or if you genuinely wanted to do something to make your mark, use your money to do that. Invest in the companies and in the people that are going to do that, and then leave them alone.
Yeah.
Leave them alone.
You've
'Cause
got to acknowledge that you
ultimately,
don't know
it's
how to run a
ego, isn't
business.
it?
Yeah. Yes, it is.
It's
Yeah.
ego. It's narcissism. The guy, he doesn't just want things to happen. He doesn't want his money to do things. He wants his name on it. He wants people to think that he made it and not everyone else. But the nasty truth of the matter is he's vacuous. He's got no idea about anything. He's been
Yeah, because
insulated by his money.
without the ego, you could do some good in the way.
Yeah.
No, it's not a million miles away from what he pretends to do, which is that you could find a
Right.
company that's doing something pretty good and say, "Oh, you guys are doing some great work here, but you need a bit more cash flow. So here's £1 billion. Do more of that," and then you step back and let them do it. You could do that, and you could actually do quite a lot of good in the world through that, with like environmental companies and that kind of thing.
Mhm.
But it's the fact that he does that and then insists on being like, "I did this. It was me all along." You know,
Actually,
that's
yeah,
what's-
and that's all he really wants. He wants the praise, he wants the kudos, but none of the work. He doesn't want to actually put in the time or the effort. And in fact, I think on some level understands that even if he did, he's not smart enough.
yeah.
He's just not smart enough. The raw fact of the matter is, like anyone born to his position of privilege, he just has never had tensions in his life that develop genius. The
Have you heard
frictions.
No, he's never had to work for it, has he? He's never failed. You learn more from failure than from success. And when you're
That
that wealthy, you're never going to fail, are you?
That's
'Cause
it.
people
You're
will
never going to be
insulate you
told
from it.
no.
No,
You're never
exactly.
you're never going to have those moments in your life where you fall down and you fall hard, and you pick yourself up again, or you get picked up by someone who helps you. You're never going to have that, and those are so important for like all of us, aren't they? Those moments are ultimately what make us, even when they're really dark and painful. They make us. People like him, they're insulated against that. So they reach that sort of narcissistic teenager phase that we all go through, where we're the center of the universe and everything is awful,
Yeah,
and
in fact, they
everyone
freeze there, don't they?
they freeze
Yeah.
at that point, and they never, ever, ever get out of it. They never develop out of it, which would be funny were it not for the fact that they're so fucking dangerous. You know?
Yeah. I don't think, like, I don't. You can't say that everyone born to money's thick. I don't mean that, but like, yeah, I don't think intelligence enough isn't. You've all heard of like the lazy intellectual, right? That guy who thinks they don't even have to be rich, but they think they're the like smartest person in the entire planet if only people would realise it. And yet they've worked in Waterstones for the last 25 years selling books. You know what I mean? Because they can't be asked to put the graft in and actually become a doctor or something, right?
Yeah.
If you're a multimillionaire growing up, you and your family, chances are you're going to be one of them, because either you're not that smart, but everyone's always telling you that you are, or you are pretty smart, but you are never going to have to put the work in, because being smart isn't enough to achieve something. You need graft as well, and you're never going to have to do that because all doors are just swung open for you straight away.
Yeah.
So you're never really going to accomplish that much. The best thing you could do if you wanted to make your mark on the world is to do what I said, is to give money to other people who are already doing it to help them. And you could go down as, oh, that guy's great, isn't he? He finds little businesses that need help and he gives them money. Isn't he brilliant?
Right.
You could be known for that. You could absolutely be known as that guy who finds a little company that's got a brilliant idea for a new green whatever, and he just gives them a load of money to make it happen. You
Yeah.
could be known for that, and that'd be a reputation. That'd be a
Here's the
legacy.
thing: Elon Musk, with the money he's got and the influence that he has, he could be the man who saves the world. He
Yeah,
could.
that could be a legacy, couldn't it? Yeah.
That could be your legacy, and that's pretty good, isn't it?
Well, you'd think
Is that not enough?
literally every problem across the world
Right.
that's caused by lack of money and resources.
Right, it's caused by lack of money. You could fund all of these projects that are looking at sustainable energy and that are looking at solving climate change, and that are, you could solve the problems of certain small countries. As a human being, you've got that capital, you've got that power behind you, and you choose to be the dude bro 4chan cunt that you are.
It's very odd.
Oh god. I mean, I think everyone is suffering at the moment, aren't they? Everyone is having a hard time with things that are happening. Everyone is. I know I fucking am. I think everyone is. But I don't want to live in this fucking stupid timeline, where the enemy has got to be fucking Musk. That's the best we can do. I'd rather live in like one of the dystopias imagined by our sci-fi authors. At least that's meaningful, right? At least there's an enemy to fight that's worthwhile. God, give me fucking Skynet, man. Give me an enemy that's worth fucking while. Give me Am from Harlan Ellison or something. But
there's an interesting
these
thing,
people
though,
are our enemies. These people are our enemies. Fucking Jesus.
You do see this interesting trend, though, with people who have, like, what you could say is too much money. And it's a thing with celebrities. I've never heard of this, but I read about it recently where, do you know how there's this trend of Hollywood celebrities having their appendix out for no reason?
Really? Is this a thing?
Because their life is, like, so lacking in difficulty. So lacking in problem.
So they seek it out.
Yeah, they almost like psychosomatically give themselves a problem that needs them to have surgery, even though they don't. Because their life, it's like the human mind doesn't know what to do without struggle, without effort, without something to work, to overcome. So, and these are people whose wealth is way below where you like Elon Musk are.
Yeah.
But even at that level, you're talking your brain's going fucked because your life's too easy.
There is. I'm doing a psychology degree at the moment, and there is this thing called dragon syndrome, and it's called dragon syndrome for obvious reasons. It's the whole Smaug hoarding thing. So, like you say, you don't need to be anywhere near Musk's level of wealth for this to take hold. But money, there comes a level of conspicuous wealth where you suddenly don't have any problems anymore.
Yeah.
Where suddenly what happens to people is their mind starts projecting out. It starts inventing concerns. They start to alienate people because they start to suspect that they become very paranoid, and they start to suspect that everyone is only around them because of their money. They take up causes. They tend to take up some kind of crusade, for good or ill, and obsess about it. Yeah. They want to be remembered for things. They become obsessed with legacy, Yeah. And it's, you can name anyone, can't you? You can name any number of millionaires or billionaires, Rowling, Musk, Ben, all of them, right? All of them are like this. Because any normal person would just sit back and go, oh, I don't have to worry about paying my council tax anymore. I don't have to worry about, where the next paycheck is coming from or anything.
Yeah, if I had that kind of money all of a sudden, the best thing about it for me wouldn't be what I could now buy or whatever. It would just be the removal of worries about money, basically.
Yeah, that's it, right? And I wouldn't have that money for very long. I would keep enough to keep myself relatively comfortable, but most of it would go away. Most of it would go away because no single human being needs that fucking money. There's no point to it.
it becomes infantilizing to them when they've got that much, because it kind of shields you from adult life as well. Like
Yes,
they
it
don't do
does.
their own, they don't even do their own shopping. They don't clean their own
Right.
house. They don't do everything. It's like living like a little rich kid, isn't it, with a butler? It's,
Yeah, I mean, this
yeah,
is the other thing, right? I would be very conscious of, and I would not, I would not want that. And I know people
no,
are like, oh, you know, you're just saying that. No, seriously, I am not just saying that. I couldn't live like that with people around me doing my things for me
no.
all
I
the
don't like it when you go to a posh hotel and they try and take your bags or something. I'm like, no, I can carry my
time.
own bag. I don't need.
I'm
It
fine.
makes me uncomfortable. I don't
Yeah.
like it.
Likewise, I mean, just for like, I don't like people in my space either. There's
Yeah.
that element. There's the
No, the idea of
isolationist element.
people thought no, but it's the idea of me sitting in my house and there's someone going about cleaning for me or doing me.
Oh,
It just makes I don't like that at all. I don't know how you could be comfortable with that.
I would use it to throw into creative endeavors. You know, I would
Mm.
want like a recording studio, a little recording studio, and a radio station and stuff like that. You know, to do little plays and things, and that is where the joy would be. But I wouldn't have the money for very long. Not a lot of it anyway, just enough that I'm okay. You know,
Well, you see, the
but
other
most
thing
of it
with
would
me,
go.
like if I won like 100 million on lottery, is that all my friends and stuff are still gonna work. So
Right, exactly.
I would end up giving a load of people money so that they
Yep.
could quit and all, because
Like,
otherwise, what am I doing every day? You know,
exactly. Likewise, a lot of my friends would get a lot of money. You know, they would just to make sure that they're okay.
yeah,
I would want to see everyone right, you know, and make sure that and then that's the difference, isn't it? I think that is the fundamental difference between one type of person and another, you know?
mm.
The hoarding mentality, the more narcissistic personality, and the not, you know, the empathetic personalities.
This
Um,
is a calculation, though. There is a point. It's different slightly for each person, but there is a point. You call it saturation point, which comes from like how much water a sponge can absorb. There is a point where you you got this much money. Any more than that is irrelevant, and it's less
irrelevant.
than you think. Yes, as in you anything in the world that you might want to do, you can
Mhm.
do it with X amount of money. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I'm ruling out, because it throws off the calculation. I'm ruling
Mhm.
out bollocks like buying your own island or whatever,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
that's nonsense. But it tops off at about 750 grand a year.
Wow, so that's
If
really,
it's lower than you think. If
yeah.
you are earning, or not even earning, if you're like getting that much money coming in
Yes.
through whatever,
Uh-huh.
anything you want to do in the world, anywhere you want to go, anything you want to buy, etc., etc. How many holidays can you have in a year? There's only so many days in a year, that kind of
Right.
thing. You can do it with that much money. So
Yeah.
any more than that is literally just going on that pile of gold.
Just pointless wealth. Yeah, just
Yes. Yeah.
acquisitiveness for the sake of acquisitiveness. The
Yes.
Dragon Lord, right?
There's
The Dragon Lord.
genuinely nothing you can do with 5 million a year that you can't do with 3 million a year, unless you're talking stupid shit like buying an island and a
Right,
fleet of yachts.
right.
But forget that. I'm talking about if you said if I was a millionaire, I'd go on holiday every month. Yeah, me
Mhm.
too. Great, but there is only so many days in a year, so
Yeah.
you probably couldn't go on many more than that. You know, so if you've got enough money to go away for 2 weeks every month, if you double that amount of money, you can still only go away for 2 weeks every month, because there's not physically more you could do, you know?
Yeah, it's madness, isn't it?
Yeah.
Ultimately, it's a form of insanity that we've accepted, that we've come to accept, and also that we've come to, we are urged to venerate as somehow something we can achieve, which we can't. I mean, that's a lie. It's a
Not for
total lie that it's aspirational. You
It's not for
cannot
very
achieve
long though.
this.
This is what makes it almost more insidious, is that America, it wasn't until the sort of like the Reagan era, America used to
Mhm.
have a tax policy that prevented billionaires.
Yes. Yes, it
If you
did.
earned more, if you once you'd got to a certain amount of money, I don't know how much it was, so I'm not
Mhm.
going to say, but once you got to a certain amount of earnings, anything above that, you were taxed at like 90%. And
90%.
that was
Yeah, that's right.
standard American policy, as in we're not having billionaires while workers can't afford food. That's not happening. So
Exactly.
if you're CEO and you're earning 500 grand a year. Good for you. You've won at life. You're doing amazing.
Yeah.
Anything above that, you're getting taxed to fuck on it.
Right.
Because you don't need it. That was the
Which
idea.
is-
And
that's
that was the
that's-
case for hundreds of like
Yeah.
100 years of American policy. That was the case.
Mhm.
It's only not been the case for about 40 years.
Yeah. And that is the sane way to do it. In fact, it's the only reasonable way to do it, right?
Yeah.
It is the only sane way of organizing society. But we have been so conditioned by, and you're right, it's ultimately Reaganism, Thatcherism in this country, which did exactly the same fucking thing. It's only because of the way we've been aggressively conditioned with those ideologies that we look at that, we look at that and balk at it culturally. You know, it's decried as fucking hell. They will use words like socialism and communism. People who've never fucking read a word of Marx, obviously.
Yeah, but this is the ridiculous bullshit about it, because like I just said, you can only earn a certain amount of money before you don't notice anymore, right?
Exactly.
That policy that America used to have and Britain used to have, you could still have that much. You could still have the maximum amount a human can possibly spend. You could still have that under that system.
Yep.
We're not saying everyone has to be on minimum wage. It's not enforced communism or whatever.
No.
It's just saying you cannot get to the point where you're just piling money on money on money. That's what it was stopping.
It's just sanity. That's all it is. It's economic sanity. That's all it is.
Yeah.
It is the only sane way of organizing an economy and a culture, a society. But at this point in 2025, we've got to the point where any prime minister, for example, that attempted to bring something like that back in would probably be assassinated. They'd probably be dead by the next day. You know?
Yeah, but it's because in times past, particularly in America, that nowadays would not accept this at all, but it's true.
Mhm.
They had a very, very clear line between government and business.
Mhm.
And particularly a very clear line about who was in charge.
Yeah.
And so you'd get things like, yeah, you can be a massive company running across the whole country. That's great, but we're taxing you, and you're not getting involved in policy, and you're not. You know, there were very clear lines written into the very founding of America as a nation.
Yep.
That made that separate. So the idea that now you've got billionaire businessmen in America's cabinet, to the likes of like Abe Lincoln, that would have been unconscionable.
It would have been horrific, right?
And
for good reason.
I'm talking about, this isn't a Dems versus Republicans thing. Republican presidents, of which Abe Lincoln was one, up until about 1990, would have thought that was horrendous.
Yeah.
If you go back to a Republican president in the 60s and tell him about that, he'd think, you what?
Yeah. It's an amazing thing, isn't it? I mean, the utter corruption and desolation of the Republican Party into what it is. I mean, now it is. I mean, I don't get me wrong. I hate the Dems as well. I think they're just a waste of space. But my God, the Republican Party. I mean, it doesn't exist anymore. Let's be honest.
No.
It hasn't existed for a long time.
Any voters or politicians in the Republican Party that had any kind of decency about them, and that actually the old values of that party mattered, they abandoned it in Trump's first term.
Yeah.
Which many of them did, and fair play to them for that. But any that's still there now, there's nothing he can do now that's going to make them go.
No. You're absolutely right. And you cannot be a good person. That's the bottom line, isn't it? If you are supporting this fascist prick,
this is the thing,
you cannot be a good person. It's impossible.
When people used to say, well, people still do say, when they used to say things like, oh, you used to be able to sit around a table with someone that were a Democrat and someone that were a Republican and having a beer. No, but do you know what? Yes, you could, but that's because the difference wasn't the same.
Right.
The difference, what it used to mean was, they both agree with equal rights for different races. Neither of them's racist. Neither of them's sexist. Neither of them's like anti-LGBTQ. But the guy on the left has different views about economic policy.
Economics, right? Which you can talk
about. That's what it meant. That's what it meant. It didn't mean one of them wants all trans people to be executed and the other doesn't.
Exactly.
It didn't mean
Whereas
that.
now it does. Yeah, exactly.
And
Whereas
that's
now
why in 70s,
it absolutely does.
And that's why in the 70s you might have an American dad who's a Democrat, an American dad who's a Republican, and they're still mates. Because it didn't mean that then. It didn't mean
Right.
what it means now. They
You
probably
can't have
agreed
it
on
now.
most things, but in some areas like economic policy or America's involvement in foreign wars, they didn't agree. And that's the kind of thing that's not a friendship breaker, is it?
No.
You can
Whereas
just
now,
argue about it. You know, it
you
don't
are
matter.
literally, I mean, like within the first 2 days of Trump's presidency, you have someone giving an unambiguous Nazi salute, right?
Yeah.
Unambiguous.
Twice. It's not even like
Twice.
they've captured his arm going up in a funny angle, and because people
No.
do that shit, they've been doing it with Democrat people.
Yeah,
But-
absolutely. But no, you saw it from multiple angles. You saw it on video. You saw it on, and they still tried to tell us that he. I mean, you know, my tolerance for that, the gaslighting bullshit that they come
Yeah.
up with. It's like, no, fuck you, fuck you. You are not worth talking to at this point. You are not worth talking. And what I love is the temper tantrums they then throw. Why won't they debate us? Why? Because you are the pigeon knocking over the chessboard. Because you
you
piss
can't
into the
debate it.
fountain. You can't be spoken to. You cannot be
No.
spoken to reasonably. You don't enter into any discourse with honesty or sincerity or good grace. You're just a cunt. You're just a fucking cunt. And people should tell you don't get to talk at the adult table. You know? You're like the piss weasel little kid whose parents have never told him no, who's throwing temper tantrums. That's what you are. That's what you are in big, fat, adult mega bodies, you know? And it's like, no, fuck you. Fuck you all.
It's bizarre that so many. It's not surprising really that so many of them are conspiracy theorist types, because it's the same sort of. I don't know how to phrase it, but like that obsession with winning. You know, with like, oh, we know something you don't. That kind of mental obsession that you see with crazy conspiracy theories is the same sort of mentality as MAGA people with owning the libs. You know, they're sat there unable to afford groceries, can't afford to put the lights on in their house, can't fill the petrol tank.
But they're owning the libs,
libs. You know, and you think, what is wrong with you? How can you think? You know, but it's the same. It's the same mentality as people who believe in conspiracy theories and stuff.
It's that thing that gives them, because, I mean, generally speaking, and this is the other thing, they don't like being called stupid, they don't like being called dumb, but they demonstrate that they are every single
time. The evidence says otherwise.
You know, the evidence demonstrates that they are fucking ignorant on almost every, I mean, the tariff thing, right? They don't know, I mean, none of us are economists, right? But we all know how tariffs work, right? Sure. I mean, I think this demonstrates a culture. You know, surely we understand how tariffs work, right? But they don't like being called stupid. But they demonstrate it every single day. And what happens is that sort of narcissistic ego that can't take being assaulted from all corners, but which is incapable of learning, has to adhere to something mythical, something it can control. And conspiracy theories, because they are completely mythical, because they're completely made up, because they don't adhere to any parameters of truth, it gives that ego what it needs. It gives it the supply. I'm smarter than everyone else. It's not that I'm less educated or dumb. It's that I'm smarter and I can see the truth, right? That nobody else can see. That's part of it. That is part of it. It's really dark and disturbing. And you've got an entire political movement that has got a president into the White House based on that psychology.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's voting for, you know, this party's going to smack that guy next to you in the face, but then he's going to kick you in the bollocks. But hey, at least he's smack that guy in the face, hasn't he?
Right.
So you're like hunched over in pain, but did you see him smack that guy in the face? And you think, why would you vote for this? How can you think this is the best? But it's like you're so desperate to see that guy get smacked in the face that you'll vote for someone who's going to kick you in the bollocks. It's just bizarre. I just don't get it.
I mean, we saw it, didn't we? I mean, I had this revelation, and it really was, I'll be honest, it was a shocker to me. It really was. I was naive enough to think that we lived in a culture where people were a little bit more enlightened than this, but we saw it with Brexit, right?
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
In this
Yeah.
culture, we saw it with Brexit. People who voted for Brexit, for the most part, they were not. I mean, this is the mistake we on the left always fucking make, as you know, collectively, which is we assume that they just didn't know, or no, they knew. They understood for the most part how bad it was going to be. They understood, but they didn't care. They didn't care because, like you said, it's owning the libs, isn't it? It's showing their tribal enemy de jure, whether it was Brussels or whether it was the immigrants or whether it was the liberals or the queers or whatever. They didn't care that it would cripple them, that it would harm their children or their grandchildren. They did not give two fucking shits so long as it hurt their tribal enemies as well. That's
Yes.
what they care about. That's what they care about. It's a politics based entirely on spite, on
Yes, it is.
petty, self-mutilating spite. And because they work like that, they think we work like that. And don't get me wrong, I fucking hate these cunts. I think they are scum. I think they are utter scum. And the more the longer I live and the more I experience the fucking dystopia they're trying to bring about, the more I fucking hate them. But you know what? Politics I want would be good for them. It would be good for them. That's the difference between us, isn't it? That's the difference between us and them. That's where the line is drawn. If we got our way tomorrow, if we woke up and our utopia was enforced, every single one of them would be better off.
Oh yeah, they'd all
Every
benefit.
single one of them.
These libs that they're so desperate to own, the policies that they're in favour of would be making those lives better as well. But it's like so fueled on hate. But the thing is, this is what shows you how kind of manufactured it is, though, because it's not the natural sort of human way to go. That like people generally, hate dissipates if you just leave it.
Yeah,
you have to keep feeding that. You have to keep fostering it.
You do,
because otherwise people just start. Anger goes away, hate goes away.
That's right.
You get off
and
of
if
it.
you look, if you look at our culture, you can see where that hate is coming from. There are these vested interests in our media, in our news media, in our in our social media that only exist if that scapegoating hatred sustains. So you've got your Daily Mail, you've got your Sun, you've got your Murdoch papers, you've got fucking Musk fueling it. You've got people like Tommy Robinson, you've got Farage, you've got the media hate machine. These are vacuous entities that without that hate, without that pointless scapegoating hatred, have nowhere to go. They've got nothing. Because again, they're not smart, they're not inventive or inspired. They've got nothing. And very likely, if that hatred goes away, those people who are feeding on it will likely turn on them as well. It's the most incredible thing. Without that industry churning away, that industry of hatred, like you say, it would go away. And people would, that sort of mania, that cloud of mania that people have would dissipate. And people would be like, oh, well, we really need to focus on the real things here. We need to focus on things like climate change. We need to focus on things like economic shifts and upheavals, Well,
letting climate change become politicized was the bizarre thing. That should have been something where both sides of the fence were on the same page, regardless of that. Whatever you think about this or that or the other, that should be something that everyone was in favour of.
Yes, because ultimately it's extinctionist, isn't it? It is going to destroy us. Ultimately, it is going to destroy the world. And it doesn't matter. Your riches mean fuck all in a desert, in a wasteland.
Yeah, but it's very much a case of short term. The people. I mean, it's got to be evil, hasn't it? Because I was going to say the people who are in favour of fuck these climate change policies.
Mm-hmm.
It's because it's making them more money.
Yeah,
But do they not have kids? Do they not have grandkids? They can't care about them.
No, they just don't care, do they? I mean, funnily enough, it's something. I mean, again, this makes me very sort of nihilistic. You hear it in this culture all the time. Or rather, you did hear it up until very recently, which is the attitude of, "Oh, it won't happen in my lifetime," and it's like,
yes,
do you not have fucking kids?
Yeah.
Do you not understand? I mean, I don't.
No,
You
I
don't.
don't
So
either.
we
No.
don't have like, so we don't have like a specific horse in this race, but we care. Why don't
Yeah,
those
that's
of
the
you who have
irony, isn't it?
children care?
That's the irony is that like you and I could absolutely lean into that. Fuck it, I'm getting biggest burning his petrol car. I'm
Yeah,
getting, I'm not
absolutely.
recycling. I'm not, because I don't have a dog in this race. I'm not having
Right.
kids,
No,
but we don't because we actually
no.
care about people beyond ourselves, and
It does. Yeah.
yeah,
And
it's bizarre that they don't because you think
it,
surely you must give a shit about your children, surely.
Mm, I do wonder. I do wonder. One of the things, I mean, I don't know whether you saw that last podcast I put out with my co-host Jack Graham.
No, I've
I
not listened to that one yet.
Well, we went down. I mean, I originally I went down this rabbit hole. It's completely arbitrary. I was doing some research for my psychology degree, and this stuff kept coming up on YouTube about estranged parents, like
Oh yeah, we
parents.
spoke about this before, haven't we? Yes,
And
yeah, I know a few
I
people who've got them. Yeah,
Wow. I mean, you really, when you go down that rabbit hole and you start looking at not just the accounts, but the videos, and when you dive into the cultures that are coalescing online of these estranged parents, and I mean, it's a real eye opener. It's a real eye opener because you
I'm talking.
realize that there's these huge generational gaps between, like, for example, our parents' generation and us, what we value.
Yeah,
We, we are like, the gap, the abyss is huge. Cultural abyss is, I think, unfathomable. I think it's unfathomable and unbridgeable. Even for those of us who have a fairly decent relationship with our parents, I think very often it is still like we are different species. It is still like we're talking past one another a lot of the time because we just don't value the same things. We have been raised in such different cultures with such different pressures that it it becomes like you're not even speaking the same language. For the particularly these ones, the ones whose kids do not speak to them anymore, who have put up very specific parameters and boundaries, it's like, wow, these people are just, they're bad. They're actually just bad people.
I'm
And
sure
as a
I
result,
told you about that article in Daily Mail about Jimmy Carr, which was
what was that?
very much on brand for this. You know, the
Yeah,
comedian Jimmy Carr.
yeah.
So there was an article about Daily Mail, of course.
Of
Millionaire
course,
Jimmy Carr doesn't speak to his poor father who lives in a council flat, right? So the whole article was banging on about how rich Jimmy is. And of course, it mentioned that time he didn't pay his tax, which was now about 15 years
of
ago. But of
course.
course, it had to mention that, which, by the way, he paid back.
He
I
paid
mean,
back, didn't he? Fair play. He did pay it back, didn't
it
he?
wasn't illegal. He's not an account. He has an accountant who said this is a scheme you can do to pay less tax. So,
Right.
like any of us, he was like,
He
okay.
just, yeah.
And then it turned out that was a bit dodgy. He found
Yes.
out it was a bit dodgy, and he was like, oh yeah, okay, that's fair enough. I'll pay it
Yeah.
back. Didn't have to do that legally, but he did.
But he did, right?
Meanwhile, Gary Barlow did exactly the same scheme and got a knighthood, but they don't talk
Yeah.
about that in the Daily
We
Mail.
don't. No, we don't, do we?
But yes,
He's a good Tory, isn't he? So of course they wouldn't. He's a good Tory, is Gary Barlow. So
it mentioned that, and it kept going on about how much money he's got, Jimmy Carr, and how poor his dad is, blah 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 blah.
Mhm.
Final line of the final paragraph in the article: Mr. Carr Senior has 3 other adult children from whom he is estranged.
Right. This is it, right?
And you think, right, the story here isn't what you're trying to tell, is it?
Exactly. The story is in the omissions, right?
Yeah, you're trying to push this as, this millionaire neglecting his poor dad. But hang on, why are none of his children speaking to him?
Yes, 4 kids who don't speak to you, right?
Yeah.
4 kids. I mean, like, okay, if it's just the one child, then you could just say, oh well, maybe there is just a particular circumstance there, and it just didn't work out, because sometimes that happens, right?
Yeah, if there's one, it could arguably be either of them's fault. But when it's literally all of your children,
right,
yeah.
This is the story. When you do dive into these cultures that are coalescing, like metastasizing online, you find this. You'll find people who are like, well, my 5 kids don't speak to me, but I don't know why. It all came out of the blue. This is the other thing they say. It came out of the blue. I don't know why. We were fine one day and then we weren't. Bullshit.
Yeah.
Bullshit. You know? Total, utter, denialist, narcissistic garbage.
Yeah.
Doesn't happen
not
that way.
It's just,
It
what's
happen
really
that way.
happened is there's been 1,001 things happen that you've ignored.
Yes.
And then one thing was kind of made them blow up. I'll tell you what it's reminiscent of. You know that age-old thing, and you see memes of this because it's that common, of teachers never see the bullying, but they see when the bullied kid snaps back.
Exactly.
It's that.
Yeah.
The 1,001 times that kid tortured me in the playground, no, the teachers see fuck all. But the one occasion I lost it and smacked him, they see that.
Oh,
and
yeah.
it's the same thing. It's the same thing. That parent hasn't seen the decades of mental anguish they've given their kid. But the minute the kid stands up to them and says, "I'm done with this," that's when they say it just came out of nowhere, and it just,
Oh, this is it. This is it. I mean,
thing.
I was so fascinated by the whole phenomena that I went and read the studies about it. And there's quite a lot of literature now. It is quite a sort of thriving area of psychology and sociology. And what a lot of these studies demonstrate is the discrepancy between the parents' accounts of the situation and the child's accounts of the situation.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah, I can imagine.
Parents it's almost universal. They will say things like, "I didn't see it coming. I didn't see any signs. I don't understand what the circumstances were. It came out of nowhere. It was just this one little thing." The child will say, "This happened and it kept happening, and I told them that it was hurting me, and I told them multiple times throughout my childhood, and I, as an adult, I tried to get them to stop. And it just came to this point where I couldn't take it anymore, and I had to tell them either change or leave me alone."
Yes. Yeah, it's a very different account of
Very
things.
different.
Yeah, like I said, I know people who've been through similar to this for one reason or another, that they don't speak to one of the parents or both of the parents for something. And it's very the same. If you were to speak to a parent, you get a massive victim mentality about whose fault it is.
Oh my God, they love it. They actually love it. They thrive on it. They actually love being the victim. And this is the other thing, right? They project. So they will project onto their child all the faults that they demonstrate. They will say, "Oh, they're being a victim." The child is getting on with their life. They aren't making like endless fucking TikTok videos or about this. They aren't in some horrible little forum where they're propping and fluffing one another up, and when they think other people aren't watching or listening, by the way, that's when you get the real accounts. Oh my God, that's when the spite and the nastiness comes out. And it's really like, that's when you're like, you know what, you fucking adult kids, they're well shot of you. They're well shot of you, because you are toxic. You're just vile, but that, I mean, the whole thing is just, it's fascinating. And I can't quite get it out of my head. It's become a bit of an obsession with me, to the point whereby I think my dissertation for my...
You're going to make it about that?
I was going to do it about... I was going to focus on, like, mental health problems in people with learning difficulties, because that's kind of my area,
but if this is driving a passion, then that would make it less work in a way.
So interesting. I think I'm going to have to. I think it's got to be this. It's got to be this subject, because it's endlessly fascinating.
You may as well. You may as well. I think if you're doing something like that, it makes it almost like less work if you're interested in it.
Yeah, I think
you've got that passion about it.
Well, I mean, that's the pattern I followed with my dissertation when I did my English degree, because, like, my English degree, I knew exactly what I wanted to do for my dissertation, and that was Clive Barker. So when I did my English degree, because I knew from day one exactly what I wanted to say, exactly how I wanted it structured, I did, you know how you're supposed to do a synopsis of what your dissertation is going to be and take it to your tutor? Well, I did that, but I did this 30-page booklet with chapters and, like, everything. I had like a bibliography at the end, and I handed it into him, And his name is Dr. David Ellis, fantastic guy. He was like, okay, we had our mentoring session, and he was like, okay, I can see what you're trying to tell me. You're basically trying to tell me, leave me alone to get on with it, aren't you? Don't interfere. And I was like, kind of, yeah. And he's like, fine. I can see that, it's in the spirit of the exercise. You've done the research, you've done the reading, you know what you want to do. So go and do it, and don't come back until it's finished,
Yeah. Yeah, that's reasonable.
And that's what happened, and the dissertation actually went down very, very well. So, I mean, I think you're right. It's a passion project. I mean, it's difficult because it's deep and it's dark, and I think it's going to be triggering for everyone, isn't it? Because we're all prey to those intergenerational politics. Every single one of us has this somewhere in our relationships with our parents. There's no such thing as a child-parent relationship that doesn't have tension or issues or problems. So it can be triggering. I think it can be quite dark and quite dangerous to delve into, but boy, if it isn't fascinating.
Yeah, no, I bet it is. But yeah, you just you don't want to get stuck down that rabbit hole of reading too much about it,
because it's too dark, right?
Yeah.
It's too well. What happens? You turn into, metaphorically, you turn into someone like fucking Batman, right? That's what happens. You become too obsessed, and it overtakes your personality.
There's just no light down there. It's like when you go in conspiracy theory rabbit holes. It's just so it's not fun like it used to be, George. When we were young, like conspiracy theory stuff were pretty fun, wasn't it?
Like, stuff like Roswell, wasn't it?
But now it's just awful. It's just all so dark and miserable, and
it's exposed itself for what it is. Ultimately, that conspiracy sphere. It's exposed itself as ultimately being like the coalescence of anti-Semitic, anti-queer.
Oh, it always ends up on anti-Semitic.
Oh, isn't it? Isn't it
Jews. Wherever you are.
You can do, and this is almost like a fun exercise. You can start with whatever conspiracy theory you like. Ultimately, somewhere along the line, as you delve into it, you will start to come across Great Replacement theory or things like Great Replacement theory. You'll come across all the sort of anti-Semitic, sort of globalist stuff. And it's like, and you can do it with any of them. You can do it with absolutely any of them. It always ends up anti-Semitic at the end. And it's like, fucking hell, Jesus, guys, can't you just... I mean, I don't mind the insanity. I actually don't mind it at all. The flat earthers, have at it, you crazy people. But it gets
I'm never convinced how many people really believe that, because like there's a part of my brain that's like, you can't be that stupid. You
cannot, because like you can literally go to a very high place where you live on a clear day, and you'll see that it's wrong.
It's also that like the whole thing was started as a joke. Well, not a joke. It was started as an experiment, wasn't it? It was like what's the daftest conspiracy we can get people to actually believe it? That was the whole point of it. But even everyone who was sort of like joining those groups and commenting on it, they were all kind of in on the joke. But it's like at some point it's actually attracted people who genuinely believe it, and it's like, oh.
I mean, I love the ones. Have you seen the channels of the people who are like flat Earth conspiracy theorists, and they try to do scientific experiments to prove that they're right, and it always turns out the other way.
Yeah,
it always turns out wrong for them.
Did you see the guy who went to the Arctic? That was quite a big one.
Oh my!
He did a massive sort of GoFundMe thing to get to the Arctic to find this wall that's apparently there.
Oh,
and didn't find it. No. This is the thing. So he then put a video out saying, "You know what? I was wrong about this. It turns out that's a load of shit." So now they're all saying that they've got to win. They've got to win.
This is it, right? This is it with conspiracy theories. You're never gonna win. It's an infinite regress. You are never gonna win because it depends. It's like a parasite, isn't it? It's like a sort of like an intellectual parasite. It protects itself.
Yeah, there's always a way out. Whatever I show you, whatever you do, there is a way to continue believing the thing you want to believe.
Yeah.
It's actually very, very similar to people believing in psychic mediums.
Yeah.
Because if you were to the visual sort of metaphor that I always use for this is if you were to imagine like one of them measuring jugs that you fill up with water, right?
Uh-huh.
And it's got to be full up in order for you to believe. Okay. With people who believe in psychic mediums, about 1% of that is things that you would class as evidence, quote unquote.
Uh-huh.
The other 99% is they want to believe.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the problem is you cannot fight that 99% with facts and logic. You just
It's not going
can't.
to work. No,
You
it's
can't.
never going to work.
No,
Unfortunately.
and because the thing is, if you could, Darren Brown would have been the end of that as an industry.
Yes, of course he
Because
would.
what Darren Brown does is he gets up on stage and he does all the stuff that mediums do, except he will tell you, this is how I just did that.
Yeah.
And this is it, right?
Well,
But people who believe in mediums say, oh, he might be fake, but the real ones aren't.
yeah.
You know, it's like, it's like you just can't get in. You just cannot get in that wall.
Cannot.
There's no way.
I mean, like, Darren Brown, but it would have been even earlier than that. It would have been Harry Houdini. Harry Houdini and the magicians, they went around, like, Houdini made loads of enemies during the 19th century because he went around exposing mediums. They fucking hated him. There is still, oddly enough, a slightly conspiratorial myth around his death. You know how he died doing the escape trick from the tub of water with the chains around him and the straitjacket, yeah? There's still a theory that it was sabotaged by groups of mediums and psychics and whatnot because they didn't like the fact that he was exposing them.
That's it. I've not heard that one, but that's interesting.
Yeah. There's still.
My favorite example of that is on. It's a fictional one, but it's very similar to what you're talking about. It's on one of the ghost stories for Christmas.
Oh, right.
Right. I think it's the Treasure of Abbot Thomas, where there's a couple of priests. Have you seen that one? I think it's from about 1970 something. So there's a priest who is like a scholar, but he's also a priest, and he uncovers this story about this treasure that's hidden, blah blah blah. But anyway, at the beginning, this younger priest invites him to a séance, basically. And he goes thinking, this is a lot of bollocks, but he goes, and the woman doing the séance says that she is filled with the spirit of a monk who operated in that building when it was a monastery like 500 years ago. So this priest, the older priest, says, "Oh, that's interesting." So he starts speaking to her in Latin, and she just freezes up. And then he starts speaking to her in French instead, and she just freezes up. And he's like, "Oh, that's interesting, because a monk here at that time would have spoken either Latin or French, not English, and yet you can't understand either." And it's brilliant. It's such a fuck you moment.
It is such a clear and obvious thing to do, right?
But what happens, and this is so accurate to real life, is that the family there get annoyed at him.
Yeah. Yes.
Not at her. They get annoyed at him.
Yes.
And he's just, I just want to like bash my head against the wall with things like this, because
that's what happens. That is what happens when the frauds get. It's well documented. When the frauds get exposed, it is not the fraud that their flock turn against. It's the messenger. It's the exposer.
So bizarre.
Unfortunately, that's what happens.
If that was me, if I'd somehow fallen into that trap of believing this, I'd be pissed at them for deceiving me.
Yes, but it happens. It happens on multiple strata of society as well. It's not just like in the case of frauds. Again, it's well documented that when abuse is reported, when someone says either I or I know of this instance where someone is being abused. In most cases, the person who is doing the reporting will be doubted. They will be turned on. It's the shoot the messenger mentality, Especially,
you see that with royals though, which is weird. Like there are still people who they get more annoyed about you making a joke about Prince Andrew being a pedo than
the
they do
fact that
about
he's
the
a
fact that he is
paedophile.
one.
Yes, exactly.
It's so bizarre, isn't
It
it?
is so bizarre. You see it in family groups, unfortunately, because like there is such a need to protect the family unit that it is not uncommon for senior members of the family to tell the person who's doing the reporting to, oh, be quiet about that, or tell them that, oh no,
Yeah.
that can't be true, oh, you're lying, blah, blah, blah. And I'm really sorry, it is not like it is in fiction where people automatically believe or will investigate or will have it doesn't happen like that. People are so
No.
invested in these structures, they rely upon them for everything, for their survival, that mentally they will protect them. You know,
Yeah.
so dark. It's so, I mean, and it is very unfortunate, but that's the way it is. That is actually how these things tend to operate.
It's just to me, autism brain. I don't understand how you can have such a dismissal of facts.
No,
Like
right.
when there's, if I like our mutual friend Casey and I were speaking about this recently, like on the subject of how we form opinions of people.
Mhm.
Okay, so we have in our head, and it's been interesting talking to Casey about stuff like this now that he's had his like diagnosis as well.
Yeah.
Because did you not know that? Because he has.
Yeah. I remember him announcing it. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's so many things where I like explaining, oh, I've always done this, and then he's like, oh shit, I do that, and that's been really nice. But in my head, I almost have like a barometer. So like it's a needle, if you like, and on the left it's green, and on the right it's red, or whichever way around. And when I first meet anyone, it's bang in the middle, it's neutral.
Yeah.
And then the things they actually do and say, as in real things that have happened, will move that needle to the left or the right. And it is a constantly moving thing. So I can have known someone for years and had that needle in the green, but then they do something really shit, and that needle will move to the other side. And my opinion of them will change because facts and evidence and things that have really happened. Whereas what a lot of neurotypical people seem to do is they form an opinion on someone early doors based on nothing and stick to it. And then they will ignore. So they've decided, I don't like that person, and then nothing will move that needle. That person could give them a fucking kidney, and they still decide they still don't like him based on nothing. And it's
absolutely true. And it's even darker.
That's how I operate on everything, though. Like,
likewise,
I have my opinions on things based on actual facts. But if something comes along that proves I'm wrong, I'll change my opinion.
Absolutely, yeah. It's an odd thing. The other thing that they'll do is that they will rewrite the past based upon that a priori assumption. So they will say, oh, they did this.
But it was only because of that.
Only because of that. Only because
they might have done that nice thing, but it's actually because they were doing this. Yeah, it's making it fit that version of events they've already decided is true. Yeah,
exactly. It's making it fit the narrative, right? It's a really fascinating way to go about things, and it leaves you. I mean, when you don't operate like that, it does leave you at this odd place where you are like exiled, doesn't it? You're sort of always outside somehow. You're always outside of the group or the sphere. And it's an odd place. It's a very strange place to operate in for both good and ill.
It is, because I find this in a lot of sort of online communities and shall we say, which I'm generally never in. But with things like favoritism as an example, right? Where, X person has done this thing, so they've been excommunicated, so to speak, right? Because they've done the thing, whatever the thing might be. So you think, okay, so to me, again, processing it with my autism brain, if someone does thing X, that must mean you're not allowed in the group anymore. Fair enough. Right. Okay, I've just learned that rule. Fine. 3 weeks later, someone else does X thing, but they're not kicked out of the group.
Right.
They're super popular and famous, and everyone likes them.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I thought that we just said that if person does thing X, they weren't allowed in the group anymore, but they've just done thing X, and it's very confusing.
It's very confusing, and it's very. I mean, we have got like a concurrent example of that happening with Neil Gaiman, don't we? I mean, this man has managed to get himself into such a position where, like Jimmy Savile, like the Weinsteins, like any abusive personality you can name, where he has been insulated from any kind of reprisal because of the fact that he made money and he made people famous and he gave that, he's at the center of industries. That's why he's being protected, right?
Well, yeah, but I don't even mean it as anything
As
as
bad as that, just like there's like a
as
faux
that,
pas or
but just
yeah.
yeah, just things that, like, that, oh, that was the death knell for that person, but then
Mhm.
this other person does that on a weekly basis, and they seem to be
Yeah, right. It is. You are right. There's something that makes me recoil from, communities. I
yeah,
suppose I tend to operate on the edge of them,
yeah, I'm the
and I
same.
don't
Yeah,
invest very heavily. I don't
yeah,
invest in community very heavily because I don't know. I see a basis for corruption in them.
yeah.
Even the very good ones, I see a basis for corruption in them, and I don't like it. I don't want to be part of that. I don't want to be part of it. You do see that. You do see that. And it is a real, I mean, when you operate in that way, it does place you at a somewhat disadvantage because, of course, humans don't operate that way generally. We are naturally communal.
Yeah.
And that it leaves you almost like fighting against that all the time. It's very tricky. It's very tricky, and it can sort of like it can put you at war with yourself sometimes.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, that's been most of my life experience is like seeing,
Mhm.
trying to learn these rules, and then
Yeah,
the rules change every week.
realizing that there
So,
aren't any, right? They're arbitrary. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah,
know, I know what you mean. What I see, what I perceive, and I do believe that I don't know what it is, and I'm not that bothered about finding out one way or the other. I am definitely neuroatypical in
yeah,
some peculiar way. I don't know how. I don't know what. I mean, I suppose being gay queer is by its very nature kind of neuroatypical, isn't it? But just by its very nature, and there is a lot of overlap between homosexual people and autistic people. There's a lot
okay,
of gay autistic guys, lots of gay autistic guys. Um, but it does leave you like an alien, doesn't it? Wandering around like a
oh yeah,
fucking alien. And like, you learn to play the game. You learn to do the things that people do for no particular reason to get by, right? But
well,
you're always at
mm,
that point where it's like, what the fuck is this nonsense? You know what?
yeah.
Why?
There's
Why? Why?
there's
Why
there's a lot
act
of
like this? You know?
one of my sort of things I really really enjoy in terms of pop culture is Star Trek, and
Yeah.
the character of Data is such a good representation of the
Yeah.
autistic experience, where
Right.
he will see a group of people because he wants to be human. That's his thing,
Yeah.
right? He's an
Yeah.
android and he wants to be human. But he will see a group of people sat around a table doing a social thing, and he monitors and observes and sees exactly what they do, and then he joins and does exactly the same thing,
Yeah.
but somehow everyone looks at him like he's done something wrong.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
that is so relatable.
Uh
It's
huh.
like,
Uh
yeah,
huh.
it's like how is it not right when I do the thing you've just done?
It's so
It
strange. It's so
yeah,
strange because it makes it. I mean, it can be very fascinating as well because it makes it a kind of art form as well. I mean, the way I operate in social situations is often like a theater. You know,
mm,
I tend to. It's almost like a pantomime in certain ways. I engage in the way that I know people do
yeah,
generally, or in a way that I know will charm people or will make people happy or whatever. Because that's just the way it is. But it is very much a sort of performance.
yeah.
It's very much a kind of character.
I do a
And
lot less of that since kind of coming
uh,
out as
yeah.
autistic. To be honest, consciously refused to keep doing that
Which I think
because
is probably a healthier way of doing it.
yeah,
If I'm perfectly honest, it's a better way of doing it because it just takes so much fucking energy, doesn't it?
yeah. But who's that energy for? Because it's not
Yeah.
benefiting me.
No, no,
What?
definitely not. Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. For me, it's stuff like small talk. I'm so
Oh
bad
yeah,
at it because I
I hate
don't like it. I don't like it. I don't like meaningless conversation. I really don't enjoy
that.
it.
No, I'm not good at that. I don't. I could sit for hours, as we do, for hours and talk about actual topics, but I couldn't. I can't walk into a kitchen and see you and ask you how weekend was.
Oh no, no, because it's awful and it's like it's
Yeah.
just that interesting, is it? I mean, it's like no.
I mean, that's the problem. Is fundamentally, I don't care what you did at your weekend, and
Funny
I'm no
thing
good at
is-
lying.
Right. Well, you know what the funny? Most people don't, including the people who are engaged. You know, they don't
I've said
really
this to me.
care.
I've said this to my neurotypical friends a lot when they've kind of agreed with me on this. Is that one of the key differences between being autistic and not is not that we are all the stereotypes of we're rude, we're cold, we're unfeeling. You're just better liars.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to hear about that person's weekend any more than I do. You don't want to look through 7,000 baby photos on that woman's phone.
No! Oh my
The
god!
only difference is that you fucking lie about it, whereas I'll
Yeah.
say no, thank you. That's the difference.
That's the difference, right? Exactly that. Exactly that. Because it's just like I mean, and it is very difficult when you've got like parents and families involved. It's very because like new parents, for example, who've just got a baby. Yeah, to them they really love they do because they're biologically programmed to think that the baby is the best thing in the world, and
Yeah, of course
everybody's
they
like,
are. Yeah, that's fine.
do you know what the
It
real
doesn't mean I give a
real-
shit. It's not mine.
no, the real sadness is babies are really boring. They're all the same. And they, for the most part, they all look the fucking same as well. Especially when they're
so
at a
much so
particular
that
age.
as has happened, if you literally took the wrong one home from hospital, you wouldn't know. So,
Yeah,
I mean, that happened.
It's happened. Yeah, it's a bit of a shocker when people find out, but it has happened. Yeah, it's like I don't find that engaging. I'm really sorry.
No.
I find it very, for me as well, it's things like ephemera and materia. So things like people's new kitchens. When they'll come up and show you
Why is that
photographs
of
on their
any
phone.
interest to anyone except you?
I
Yeah,
don't care.
I mean, you're going to love it. You've spent money on that. You've designed it for
Yeah.
to your taste. Of course, you're interested in that. I totally understand that. I will be too if I do mine. But
Right.
I'm not interested in yours.
No. And I don't engage with that kind of thing. I just don't. I don't find things like buying homes or decorating homes, or I don't find it impressive. I just do not find it that interesting, It's ephemera insofar as I'm concerned. Give it 200 years, it may be buried under desert. I just it's meaningless to me unless it's some really impressive feat of architecture that's had that's a temple or that's carved and is beautiful, or that has some sort of a cult or what like resonance about it.
I don't think any people's interested in each other's stuff like that, though. It's just the better neurotypical people have developed this culture of lying and pretending that they are, which those of us who aren't plugged into the neurotypical network don't do.
My ability to mask that has really diminished since COVID, since the lockdown. I remember, during the lockdowns, people, and this is I know I harp on this about a lot, but it was generally people of older generations approaching me with pictures on their phones of things of their new car or their new kitchen, and I'm like, in my head, I was thinking, we're living through one of the most ghastly, potentially apocalyptic situations in our lifetime, and you're fucking showing me your fucking kitchen. What the, there are bodies piling up and you're showing me your fucking kitchen. Why should I care? And why do you care? Fucking kitchens. I'm like,
no, I'm the same as with babies. I understand why a person cares about their own and why he's obsessed about their own. I totally understand that. I just don't understand why you would expect anybody else to. I don't get why you would assume that anyone else give a shit.
This is it, right?
Because you must know how boring it is when someone shows you their million baby photos.
Right.
So why are you now doing it? It's not like The Ring where you have to pass it on. Everyone did it to you when they had their babies, so now you've got one. You've got to do it.
You've got to do it, out of spite, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you could break that cycle. You could decide it
Oh
ends
my
with
god.
me. We're not doing this
Yeah.
anymore.
It's like hereditary abuse, isn't it?
Yeah,
Oh my god, we should start a campaign. We should actually start a campaign. Oh my god, stop the baby pictures. Yeah, Jesus Christ.
yeah. No one else cares about it as much as you do, and
Yeah,
that's fine.
that's
That's
it.
normal. That's yeah,
Yeah, but nobody else will. Or not. I think the big problem is in sincerity, isn't it? I
yeah,
have a real thing. I've got this thing in my drawer about insincerity, and it's only gotten worse as time has gone on.
yeah. I find that I don't. I mean, I can't do it myself for one thing.
Mm,
I read a
right.
really good quote about this, saying about autistic people can't lie. No, I can lie if I know I've got to in advance. Okay.
Right.
So if you said to me, right, we're going out tonight and we're seeing Steve.
Uh,
Steve thinks we were at place X last night, but if he asks, tell him we were at place Y. I can do that. Fine.
right.
If he asks too many follow-up questions, I'm screwed
You're
because I
screwed.
can't
Yeah.
spontaneously lie. But I can remember a script and I'm all right. But what
Yeah.
I can't do is fake sincerity. So
Yes.
I can't pretend to give a shit about your holiday that you just went on when I don't.
Mhm.
I can't do
Yeah.
that. I have zero ability. I'm not saying
Uh-huh.
I'm bad at it. No, I cannot do it. I
Yeah.
have no ability at all to do that,
Mhm.
which is why people think I'm rude or I'm whatever because
Huh.
you're all good at lying about it.
Yeah.
You don't care either, but you can lie about it. I can't. That's the
Right.
difference.
Yeah. No, I am. I mean, I am. I can do it if I need to. I'm very good at wildly inventing on the fly. Actually, I'm very good at anything spontaneous like that. But I don't like doing it.
Mm.
I don't like, and what I resent about, I suppose, what you could call neurotypical culture is that it places you in positions where you really have no choice. You know,
Yeah.
you have to do it, or court conflict. You know, and it's
Yeah.
like, why? Why can't you just say, you know, I can't, or I don't want to, or it's not for me, or, you know,
There's a
it,
weird thing with because like at the moment I'm setting up my birthday party,
yes,
and
yeah,
there's a weird thing with people accepting invites that
mm,
I've always found very excuse me very bizarre in neurotypical culture, which is this where they think it's polite to accept the invite
mm,
knowing that they're not going to come
uh,
and then make some excuse last minute. That
that's
is
me, yeah.
somehow in neurotypical culture that is seen as more polite than
uh,
just saying to me immediately, thanks
yeah,
for the invite, but I don't really fancy that, but I hope you have a
yeah,
good time. Now for
yeah,
me, I would much rather they said that
just
because then
say
I know
like
from the
just
outset
yeah.
that they're not going to come.
Hmm.
That's much better to me because then I know they're not going to come, they don't fancy it, that's fine. But why is that seen as rude? Why is it preferable to lead me on and let me think that you will be there, and then at
I
the
think,
last minute,
I mean,
it's odd?
so much of it. I mean, it's so interesting. But when you look at like the history of it, a lot of that kind of thing derives from Victoriana.
Yes, it
Never
does. Yeah,
used to do that. Like, if you look at the eras before that, the notion of like, you know, like the British protocol and
yes,
courtesy just didn't fucking exist. It
no,
just didn't exist. We were much closer to our European cousins before then.
yeah,
Victoriana happens, and suddenly, because you have this sort of strata of society, you have the Industrial Revolution, you have the very fucking conspicuously rich. And just like we were discussing before, they don't have anything to do. They don't have any friction in their lives, and
they just make up all these rules, don't they?
they
And these weird
and
social things, and which
oh
fork
my!
you use, and
And if you
yeah,
want weird social rules, if you want weird fucking etiquette, Victorian England. Oh my God. There were, and if you, I mean, I know you're a Dickens fan. If you read Dickens, Little Dorrit's got this character, right? I think she's called Mrs. Majors or Mrs. General or something like that. It's one of Dickens's puns, you know?
yeah,
Her job, her position is that she comes into families who have new money and she teaches the women,
teaches them
the
how
young,
they now need to
how
behave.
to operate. And I mean, Little Dorrit's a satire anyway. It's one of Dickens' most satirical novels. and it is exaggerated a little bit, but it is to that ridiculous level, to the point whereby, like the character Little Dorrit herself cannot call her father anymore, as she's done so her whole life. She has to call him Papa
Yeah.
because that creates a nicer shape on the mouth.
Yeah.
And it's like,
well, it's all this crap like what order you take your cutlery off your table in it, and all this
yes.
arbitrary sort of.
How do you walk? Who do you associate with? I mean, in Little Dorrit, her whole life she has helped people. That's her entire character. But when they get money, she's told that she is not to do that because it's redolent of servile classes.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow. And that's Victoriana. I mean, Little Dorrit is the one where Dickens just goes full on fucking vicious satire on Victorian society, basically. I mean, her father, Little Dorrit's father, starts the book in a debtor's prison. He's like the king of the debtor's prison. When he, as in one of those Dickensian circumstances where some like long lost uncle dies and he inherits their entire estate and he gets money, he loses his mind. Because of the protocols, because of the expectations, because of the pressure, he actively loses his mind. He gets it's almost like a kind of money-fueled class status dementia. And it's like, I mean, wow, you know, that is I can't believe he got away with it. I actually can't believe Dickens got away with it, because it is vicious. Little Dorrit is one of the most vicious assaults on Victorian class structure and the utter bullshittery of it, like the nonsense of it, that you will ever find. And also,
a lot of stuff that we still have though comes from that era though, like you were saying though, doesn't it? A lot of rules that you just think, just random shit like don't put your elbows on the table. Why?
I mean, why? There's no hygiene reason for that.
No, it's not like don't put your feet up. I understand that.
Yeah, I get that. But why? Yeah. It's like, in order to eat properly, you've kind of got to do that, because it doesn't. It's stupid. It's
so that you can't take big mouthfuls and all that crap. Why?
Yeah.
What does it matter? It's all that kind of nonsense.
Oh my God. I mean, it is fascinating to research, but living in it, especially for like a young woman, must have been the worst. Yeah,
it's just a minefield, everything you do. But like that is kind of, I still think that about a lot of things, such as the accepting invites when you know you're not going to be there. Why are you doing that? Why wouldn't you just say,
no,
I don't fancy that?
I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, it you know, if it is uncertain and you just don't know, you know.
Oh no, that's a different matter. You know, that's a different matter. Like I have a few friends like you. My friend David,
I mean, my schedules are all over the fucking place. I often don't know like until a few days before whether I can.
Yeah.
You know, it's a pain. I know it's something I hate about my job, but it is.
There is a difference between. I have every intention of going, but I literally might find out the day before that I can't. And you know all along that I don't fancy that. There is a difference.
I mean, I must admit, I felt really guilty. Because there were a couple I missed, and it was all because of fucking. You remember when that fucking rainstorm?
Mm.
Oh my God! I mean, oh my God! I felt really bad about that, because I was like, oh, shit. Is there any other way I could get there? You know?
Yeah.
But the guy, I will never. I got there to the train station really dead early because I wanted to be in Sheffield early so we could have a powwow and whatnot. And the young guy, I will never ever forget the young guy. Because he was so nice. He was so like apologetic behind the counter, turning the fucking screen to show me cancelled.
Everything.
Yeah. And he was like, there is a train that is heading that way, but here's what will happen. It'll stop at Derby. Yeah. You'll get off and you'll be stuck there.
Yeah.
And you'll not be able to get back unless you like get a lift or, and I'm like, oh, fuck.
Yeah.
No,
but you see, that's very different to accepting,
it's a different thing, isn't it? Like, because this is like, no, I know exactly what you mean. It's the thing where like they think they're saving face and they think they're being polite.
Yeah,
think they're
somehow
being
it's more
courteous.
polite to accept the invite because
Yeah.
somehow in their mind, telling me they don't fancy coming to the thing I've invited
Is
them to
is insulting,
is
right? They think that
insulting. Whereas
right.
accepting it and then cancelling last minute isn't. And I actually
Is
think the reverse, to be
the
honest.
reverse is true.
I'd rather
Yes.
know from the outset that you don't fancy this event, and then I think,
Yes.
okay, because not only do I know not to expect you,
Yeah.
but also I know not to invite you to that kind of thing again.
Yeah, it's not, and don't get me, and this is the other thing, right? If something isn't someone's thing, it's fine.
Yeah,
It's fine. If that's not what they want to do, if that's not how they operate, then fine. 100% fine. I wouldn't invite someone to fucking Warhammer World who would find like little painted sci-fi miniatures boring as shit.
yeah, exactly. But you ask them, and they say, "No, I
Yeah,
don't fancy that, thanks."
I
But
don't.
then,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
but yeah,
absolutely fine.
it's just an odd sort of cultural practice where it's somehow seen as more polite to
It's very
accept the
Victorian.
invite, even though you know you're not going. And
In
I
fact,
really
it
am
is.
not a fan.
It's very Victorian. It's
Yeah,
very
feels
Victorian.
it.
I wouldn't be surprised if that is actually a thing. I bet you could find that written down in some book of protocol.
That you must do this if you accept.
Yeah,
If one is invited to a soiree,
yeah.
always accept at the first instance,
It
and you can
wouldn't
make
surprise me.
excuses later.
It
Yeah,
is that weird and arbitrary. The
yeah,
rules of Victoriana. This is
yeah,
ironically where like the underclasses had almost like a it's one of the few areas where they were more free than
yeah,
the upper classes because they didn't have this. They did, if you were underclass, or working class, you could kind of do what you wanted. You didn't have to
yeah,
conform to these stupid restrictions of manners and of courtesy and whatnot. And this is what also gets me. It's not genuine courtesy. It's
no, it's not.
prescribed, so it's not
It's not.
genuine.
You're not actually thinking, "Oh, I'll go because I don't want to hurt his feelings." You're saying that because you think that's what you're supposed to do.
Right. It's
Yeah,
weird. It's so weird. I mean, a lot of the Victorian writers satirize this actually. Like Robert Louis Stevenson, the Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde is totally about this. It
mm.
is totally about this. Henry Jekyll, he is a doctor, therefore he has automatic status. He's not rich, but he has automatic status within society. He is considered to be middle class, effectively.
Yeah,
What would be
yeah,
considered middle class in Victoriana. Therefore, he has a social circle. He has standards to maintain, and that's what's driving him mad. That is what's driving him mad. The appetites that he is indulging, which he does as Henry Jekyll, by the way, as much as he does as Victor Hyde, he can't admit to, or he can't practice openly for fear of losing status and of scandal. The big thing is scandal. And
yeah,
that's why he invents the potion that turns him into Mr. Hyde. Edward Hyde, not Victor Hyde, I don't know, Edward Hyde, It's like, that's the whole satire of the book. It's basically saying that within systems of repression and prescription, you breed monsters of yourselves.
yeah.
That's the whole satire.
I wonder how much that, but like, it's like the Frankenstein novel, though. The whole point of that
Yeah.
is not, man makes scary monster that runs amok. It's
So,
about man's hubris. It's about,
yeah.
arrogance. It's about
Hmm.
not, you know,
It's
yeah, just
about
thinking you can
operating,
powerful men doing whatever they want without
yeah,
thinking about the
on a whim,
consequences. And yeah,
right?
but
Which
do you
is
think
what
that
it
was
is.
understood? Do you think that was recognised at the time it was published?
Well,
Or
it's generally not understood now by a great many
no?
people. No, I doubt it. I sincerely doubt it. No, I mean, like the satires of those sort of Victorian Gothic novels are often lost, aren't they?
Yeah.
They are often. I mean, like the Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. All of the adaptations get it wrong. Like every single one that's ever been done
Well,
gets it wrong.
the Invisible Man. I know that was slightly after Victorian times. Was that
But
technically Edwardian? But it's still in the
yeah,
same. But the film version of that commits what I think is a terrible sin against the original text, which is that in the original text, this guy invents this formula, tests it on himself, and immediately starts getting corrupt and sinful because he's like, I can get away with anything.
Right.
So
right.
because he can, he does, right?
Yeah.
In the film version, they say there's a problem with the formula that's made him evil.
Yes.
Like, no, you are so missing the point of
You've
this
missed
book.
the point. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly that. They do
Yeah.
exactly the same with like again with Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. They always make Hyde a monster.
Yeah.
They always make him mutate into this like physically grotesque creature.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, that's not how he is in the book. That's not how he is in the book. Edward Hyde is just another guy. He looks
Just a
different from
different
Jekyll. He
look.
does
Yeah,
change. He
yeah.
physically changes, but he just looks like another man. The book is really unusual, actually. It states that he excites this uncanny reaction of negativity in people around him. He is not like physically ugly or deformed in any particular way, but he excites this almost like preternatural negativity in people where they automatically feel hostile and angry and violent, you know. But it is not the book. This is what people always make them. It is not about the duality of man. It is not about, oh, we all have this darkness inside of us. That's not the point. If you read the book, that is not the point. The point is that everything that's in Hyde is already in Jekyll, and
Yes.
what's repressing it is the sort of Victorian society, this buttoned-down straitjacket of manners and courtesy. It tells you like what Jekyll is indulging that he's so ashamed of. But you know, there is a really profound queer subtext in that.
I was going to say I've always assumed it was being gay. To be
I
honest.
think because Robert Louis Stevenson was gay, so I think it's very likely. I think it's very fucking likely that that's what he was getting at.
But I mean, it blatantly is in Dorian Gray. But it's the same sort of idea, isn't it? Oh, what's he up to at night? We know what he's up to at night. Come on, we're not stupid.
Right, yeah. But again, because of the restrictions of Victorian society, you couldn't actually state that.
Yes,
you had to sort of hem around and sort of like, well, it could be any number of things, couldn't it? You know, but it is amazing to me that you've got this book that is adapted so much. Like there must be as many. Oh God! There are so many adaptations of The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and every single one gets it wrong. I mean, like every single one. There is not a single adaptation that understands the central satire.
Do you think this is because people refer to the previous adaptation rather than the book? Because I often think that with a Christmas Carol, because there's a couple of things, like a famous one being when he stood at the door and the door knocker turns into Marley's face.
Yep.
And quite a common thing in the film adaptations is that it screams Scrooge's name.
Yes.
In the book, it doesn't make a sound.
It just
silent.
Changes, doesn't
but they just put it there in one of the old adaptations, so every version has that in. But it's like, you haven't read the book; you've just watched the previous film.
Just watched the previous films. Dracula, right?
Yes.
Dracula's like a classic for this.
With the Nosferatu film, obviously it's technically not Count Dracula; it's Count Orlok. And I think to me, I must just remember what I was about to say here because I just need to go on a quick tangent. But what I liked about the physicality of Count Orlok, how he looks like a rotten corpse, is to me, it's as if the power of him is so great that a physical form can't restrain it. Yeah. So in a similar way to, have you ever seen Men in Black?
Yeah.
Remember when there's that giant cockroach that's stuffed inside a human body and the body just keeps decaying because it cannot contain what's in it? It's like Orlok is that, but instead of a physical thing squashed in him, it's just this dark power.
Yeah,
it's like the human body can't. Dracula doesn't have that. Dracula is able to maintain his veneer of humanity, isn't he?
Yeah.
But what I loved about that adaptation, which is something I've never really seen on film with Dracula, even like I said, technically Orlok isn't Dracula, but he kind of is, given the history of that film.
Yeah, kind of
is the idea that this is not a bloke with pointy teeth and red eyes. This is a power that is so prominent that just like his presence affects the environment. There's suddenly
Yes.
a plague going around. He isn't the carrier of that plague,
Nope.
but suddenly just him being there
Yeah.
means there is disease, means
He's
there is
fanatic,
darkness.
isn't
The weather is affected. There's
Yeah.
rats everywhere. There's just him being there affects everything.
It's
That
so
level
cool,
of
isn't it?
power, you never really see that with Dracula in films. They kind of
You
miss
don't.
it. They kind of just make
Yeah.
it, yeah.
It's a shame because, like, it worked so beautifully. Just
Yes,
his
it did.
presence is fanatic, right? It enervates the world around him. He drains the energy and the vitality from the world, so you get dirt and filth and disease just running amok, madness, even
There's,
hysteria.
there's a line from the Dracula book. I can't quote it because it's a long time since I've read it, but I always think of it. And that film Nosferatu made me think of it a lot, which is how it's talking about when the Demeter first set off, the seas were
Mhm.
calm, but almost
Yeah.
immediately it sets sail, it isn't. And it describes it, it's as if nature is shuddering
Yeah.
that what has now been introduced to it. The
Which,
sea was
yeah,
calm. The minute he's on it, it's like, oh God. And now
that's
there's
it.
a
Yeah.
storm, and
Something.
yeah.
Yeah,
And
something
that,
unnatural, something that like inverts natural law. Yeah, I mean that's
yeah,
brilliant. I love that
uh,
stuff. I
yeah.
absolutely love that stuff.
And the only thing, right, that's even come close to that for Dracula for me, in terms of that level of power,
Mhm.
is on a film which is much maligned, but I would recommend watching 3/4 of it, and I'll
Ah,
explain that point, which is the Dracula Untold, which was a Luke Evans film,
I
which
don't
was
think I've
about
seen
his
that.
origin. Now, it's very, very good. I really liked it, but it's one of those films that was made around the time when Hollywood got obsessed with shared universes, right?
Oh,
So
okay.
3/4 of this film is fantastic, but then the
Mhm.
last bit of it is where they suddenly decide to jam it into whatever shared universe they were working at that time.
Oh, I
So the
see.
plot takes a diversion, and you think this is not how this was originally going to end, is it? And it's one of them, right? But
Right,
the
got you.
first 3/4 of it are great, and it's like a fictionalized account of Vladimir Tepes and his kingdom
Mm.
in Transylvania is about to be attacked by the Turkish army. They do not have a Turkish army. They do not have an army to repel them with. So he hears from this old lady, he hears this myth about this demon up in the mountains who
Mhm.
will make a bargain with you. So he goes up to the mountains, and this demon is played by Charles Dance, by the way. It was brilliant.
Oh, okay.
He goes up to the mountains and says, I need your bargain, whatever it is. Do you want my soul? Do you want whatever? And he says, oh, no. He says something which is very cool. He's like, I will give you the power to turn back the armies of man. I
Okay.
won't take your soul. You will get rid of that yourself. And then so he bites him, makes him drink his blood. He wakes up the next morning and the sunlight's hurting his eyes, so he has to get out of the shadow. And like I can't remember the specifics of it, but he like accidentally knocks a tree down or something with his bare hands. So he's like, oh, okay, something's. But anyway, so the whole film is about him trying to retain his humanity while protecting his kingdom. He almost kills his actual child more than once. And the ending of
wow.
the original ending was going to be him isolating himself up in a castle in the mountains because he can't be around his family.
So
He's done this.
effectively becoming Dracula. Yeah.
Yes, he's done this for a reason, but the cost is exactly what Charles Dance's character said.
Right.
You've lost your humanity now.
Yeah.
But then they change it to fix it into this shared universe, which is bollocks.
Ah, it's a shame.
But the point I was going to make is that there is a scene, which is the only one I've seen of Dracula, where you really get a sense of that power, where the Turkish army is marching towards his castle in Transylvania, right? The castle doors open and he comes out on his own. He's now got he is Dracula now.
Yeah, so he's ultimately powerful. Yeah, really.
Yeah. And he just walks towards them casually, and the horses start rearing up, and a bunch of the soldiers just go like, no, 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 and just turn around and charge away. He hasn't done anything yet, but like the generals are like, what the fuck is the matter with you? What are you doing?
Yeah.
And a lot of them are just like, no, no, forget it, and they just leave. There's just something about his presence that just terrifies them. So much so that there's this really cool image that when they come back to fight him, the general has made all the soldiers wear blindfolds.
Brilliant.
because the sight of him is just like terrifying to them.
Oh,
And
that's
then
so cool.
there's an awesome battle scene where he fights an army on his own without any weapons, and it's beautiful. But just that moment of him coming out and the horses panicking and the men panicking, and you're talking an army of like 5,000 men here, and you know, that is the only representation I'd seen on screen of the power Dracula's supposed to have until the Nosferatu film, where you get it's done in a different way, but it's the same thing. The fact that no, it's not. It's like that body can't contain him. It's not just a bloke with sharp teeth and red eyes. There is far more to this.
Yeah, there's more going on here. He is raw thanatism, isn't he? He's just like elemental death contained within a body. Like
it's concentrated around that physical form, but it's more than that. There's more going on there than that body can contain. And I like how Willem Dafoe's character in that film sort of. I liked that, how he sort of indulges the men's desire to battle it physically. He's like, oh, you need stakes and knives and fire and whatnot. So they go off to do that. And then he's immediately to Lily Rose Depp's character like, yeah, none of that's going to work.
It's not going to work, right? You
need to fool him into being around when the sun comes up. That's literally it. Nothing else is going to work.
What defeats death, right? Eros and Thanatos.
Yeah, it's light. It's the new morning.
It's light. It's love. It's lust. It's desire. What defeats death? You know, it's really beautiful. It's really poetic. I loved that element of it. I loved that element. As I said when after I'd been to see it, I would love to watch 1992's Bram Stoker's Dracula and this back to back, because they are the same story, but they are two in terms of their themes, antipodean versions of it.
Yes.
Bram Stoker's Dracula is lurid, colourful, erotic, sensual, and he's about redemption, ultimately. It's about redemption, ultimately, because that's what happens at the end. He gets redeemed, even the worst creature in the world gets redeemed. The Nosferatu is the exact opposite. It's darkness, it's decay, it's disease, it's thanatic. And I loved that element. Both equally indulgent, by the way. Both
they are very good. They're very rich, aren't they?
Oh God! Yeah. I mean, when I went to see Nosferatu, it was almost like I described it to my mother after, because she's a huge horror fan, and we both went to see it. I said it's like the richest of chocolate desserts. Like the most decadent of dark chocolate desserts, where it just keeps piling on the gothicism. And it has no restraints, and that is its strength. That's what makes it so good. I loved it. I'll be honest, I loved it. And to take this very familiar story, I mean, people, Dracula is a myth at this point. Everyone knows the story. They know the beats of the story. If you ask someone who's never seen any of the films, never read any of the books, just give me the outline of the story of Dracula, they'd be able to do it. They'd be able to do it. And this film hits all those familiar beats, but it makes it new. And it
does, yeah.
What really got me about it, again, is this very subtle subtext of feminist satire. So, what pulls Orlok from his grave is the unhappiness of one woman in Victoriana. Victorian society is so repressive and so lacking in anything of meaning or poetry for this woman, that her desire and her unhappiness calls forth something incredibly dark. I love that. In that regard, Orlok becomes like the very manifestation. By the way, the film is clever enough that it doesn't make him the solution to that problem. It makes him a manifestation of it. So he is like patriarchy, like manifest. He's in all of its darkness, in all of its violence, in all of its moribund and macabre nature. So when he comes to her and he's proclaiming in a way that he loves her, it's all about power and dominion and violence. If you don't love me, I'm going to kill everyone around you. You belong to me. He's like the ultimate male force in that regard, and I thought it was so clever.
It's very good. It's a very, very strong film.
Yeah, I stronger. I mean, I love Eggers to bits, but I don't know. I just didn't think it was going to be as strong as it
Mm.
was, you know, and as beautiful as it.
Yeah, it's had a really good reaction though, hasn't it?
Yeah. Oh, it's done really well. I mean,
Yeah, that's nice to see as
like
well.
critically and in terms. I mean, you know, in
Yeah,
terms of box office, it's done really, which horror does. You know, even horror of this type doesn't tend to do gangbusters like this has done. So
no.
I'm very pleased. It's kind of opened the way, hasn't it?
Yes,
For
it has, because if it had been like critically loved, but people didn't really go out to see it,
yeah,
it would kind of be like, oh, we're not likely to get anything like that again, are we? But the fact that it's done so well, that kind of makes you think, oh, okay, there is a
yeah.
market for this.
There's a
And
market for this kind of
yeah,
fiction, and really like sumptuous gothic
yeah,
dark horror as well. I mean, I'm like, that's the other thing it reminded me. I was really shocked to be reminded of watching Hammer Horror while I was
yes.
watching it. I was
The
like,
image of like the hearse turning up, and there's
yeah,
that image of the men going through the graveyard with the torches filmed from the top down, and that
yes.
was very reminiscent of Hammer stuff, I
I was
thought.
like,
Yeah,
this is referencing. It's like a roadmap of all the cinematic adaptations of Dracula that have ever
yeah,
been, right?
yeah, yeah,
And I do
yeah. It
think that
was.
was part of the project, quite frankly, because it's
Oh,
so
I'm sure it's
overt, you know.
deliberate. He knew what he was doing.
Yeah. Oh,
But,
yeah.
but
Yeah.
I think getting the scale of monsters right, the classic monsters,
Hmm.
is half the battle, really.
Yeah,
And
it's hard. It's a
like
thankless task, you know.
making Dracula or Orlok in this massive threat
Yeah.
is important, and I think that's something ironically that the Hammer films didn't really get.
No,
Dracula was kind of often just
no.
reduced to a bloke with teeth, you know.
And he was
Uh,
so easy to defeat as
yeah,
well.
that's what I
I mean,
mean. Yeah,
you look at that the original Dracula, where you've got Van Helsing as Peter Cushing, you've got Dracula as Christopher Lee. All he does, he uses like candlesticks that are just readily available to make a cross to
yeah,
fend him off, and they just open the fucking curtains of the castle, and he
yeah.
just
Pull them
gets
down.
turned
Yeah,
to dust.
I know,
It's
but
like,
there's one where he pushes him in a bush because
yeah, and he
they
gets
make up this.
impaled.
Yeah, they make up this new rule that a thorn bush can hurt him because of the
Yeah.
crown of thorns. So they shove him off a castle wall into a bush and he dies.
Oh god, I mean, yeah, that version of Dracula is so vulnerable. He's not much of a threat, is he?
No, but
Let's be
with
honest.
regard to the scale, there's another horror film out at the moment called Wolfman, which I'm
Yeah,
trying to
yeah.
see, and that's great because it does the opposite. Now, the
Oh,
problem with werewolves is that they are not scary as a large scale threat.
no.
If you have an army of werewolves like Underworld or something, right? It's just something to be shot at.
Yeah.
It's just like anything else, you know. They
Mhm.
did it quite well in the film Dog Soldiers. I love Dog Soldiers,
Yes, I love
but it's the
soldiers.
same thing in that it's very small scale. It's in
Yes,
middle of nowhere. It's a small number of people, and you're isolated. That's how
that's
you
it.
do a werewolf, right? If you
Yeah.
see American Werewolf in London, that film is the
Mhm.
perfect example of this because at the beginning, when they're on the moors in
Yeah.
the middle of nowhere in this little village, that werewolf is a terrifying threat, right?
Yep.
At the end, you bring it into a massively populated city, police turn up, shoot it, problem
Shoot it.
solved.
That's it. It's
Done.
the end,
Done.
right?
Yeah,
Werewolves could be like a common problem, right, in that
yeah.
world. Yeah.
It doesn't work in the city. You have to have them. So this new one, Wolfman,
Oh,
it's a family and they are going to. So it's a really good story. I'll try not to
hmm.
spoil the sort of any of the twists
Yeah,
and
yeah.
turns, but kid has a dad who is like we were talking about earlier, actually like a conspiracy theorist type thing.
Yeah, yeah.
But he believes there is something living in the forest around their home. They live in this cabin in the middle of
Okay.
nowhere. And the Native Americans believed it, and it's been a myth for a long time. But his dad genuinely believes it.
Got you.
So as soon as his son's grown up, he gets the fuck away from him, basically. So then
Oh, he's a
years
bit
later, yes, years
too
later,
much, yeah.
yeah, his dad dies. The son has to go back and sort of clear out his house. So he
Right.
takes his wife and his kid with him, and they make it like a bit of a vacation away, sort of thing.
Got you.
So, but then of course the twist is his dad turned out to be correct.
So there actually is something out there, yeah.
But So the dad gets attacked by it. So the film takes place all in one night. And it's about them locked in this cabin, desperately trying to survive the night from the thing that's outside. But at the same time, the dad is changing because he's been bitten by it. So he's inside the house. He's desperately trying to protect his family whilst this is happening to him at the same time. There's literally like 3 people in the whole film, you know. It's very small scale, it's very isolated, it's very claustrophobic, but to me that's how you do a werewolf film.
Yeah, it sounds good. I haven't seen it, but
I liked it. I really
saw the trailer, but it sounds really good. At cinemas now.
Yes, it is, and I liked it because to me that's how you do a werewolf film. It's like and it's the same guy, and this is very telling. It's the same guy who did the Invisible Man film from a couple of years back.
Oh, okay.
Did you see that one?
Yeah, I did see that one. It was quite good.
Yeah, I liked that because again, it's small scale. The problem with the original Invisible Man story is that he goes invisible and then he's like, I'm going to take over the world. And you think, how are you doing this exactly? Whereas in this one, it's an abusive, obsessive ex-boyfriend who's a stalker. Perfect. So it's set in one house with one woman, and he's in that house and she doesn't know it. That's terrifying.
That is brilliant, isn't it? I mean, it's such a brilliant concept, and that's the way to take the material. That's the way to do it.
It's the scale. It's about having the scale accurate to the monster. Because again, take him out into the public. All it needs to do is rain. You can see him put a bullet.
You can see him. Yeah.
That's it. It doesn't work on a wider scale, but in a small scale, like one house, and he's in there, that is scary. And that's how you do it. And I think getting the scale right is quite important for these classic monsters, and they seem to be on a train recently of getting them right. So I'd like to see what's next. Really,
they really do. I mean, what was it? I mean, Eggers is said he's doing a Wolfman film, hasn't he?
Yes, apparently so. Yeah, but it's set in like Middle Ages. It's set way back when. Yeah,
interesting. Very interesting. So is this going to be closer to maybe like The Witch?
I think so. Yeah, that was the vibe I was getting from what I read about it. Yeah,
he's such a stickler, isn't he? I mean, I know for The Witch, his whole thing was authenticity, wasn't it? He really went nuts on like getting the authentic clothing and the even the like down to the accents and the language that the characters were using.
Yes, I like that though, because I think there's a reason setting something. I mean, so many of my stories are set sort of Victorian time or early.
Of course, because you are very much a disciple of M.R. James, aren't you? You know that's
you know. For me, there's a practical reason for that as well as an aesthetic one, which is that the internet exists now. So, you know, you can just go on the internet and say, how do you fight a werewolf or whatever, you know. There's no mystery. There's no mystery in the way that there would be if you set a werewolf tale in the Middle Ages, you know. Everyone's seen the only way you can do like a werewolf film now, or an example of this done well, but it still highlights the problem. Midnight Mass, a series we're both big fans of.
Yes, of course.
The only reason that series works is if you accept that this is a world where vampires don't exist in pop culture.
Yes. Yeah.
Because literally, it's so obvious to us as the audience immediately what's going on in that village, right? But that's because we've watched Buffy, we've seen Fright Night, we've read Dracula, you have to think, have these characters never heard of Dracula?
Never heard. And that's exactly it, right? That is exactly it. In this world, that tradition largely doesn't exist.
It can't do. It can't, or that story doesn't work.
Right. And you just
have to accept this as you have to accept this as a premise where in the world that Midnight Mass is set in, vampires in pop culture aren't a thing.
Just don't exist. Yeah. Which is fair enough, isn't it? I mean, if that's like the setup, if that's what the world establishes, fine.
Yeah.
To make itself work, you know.
But that's the only way you can really do them in the modern day. Because otherwise, you're in a situation where everyone knows how to fight a vampire.
Of course, and everyone knows how to fight a werewolf as well, right? You silver bullets and everything, you know.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That's actually a plot point on the. Do you remember 30 Days of Night? That was a film, but also a comic book. One of the older vampires is furious with the younger ones because he's like, "Do you realize how hard we have to work to stay invisible?" they know everything about us now. They know how to kill us. They know how to defeat us because of, people writing about us in books that have become famous. We have to be smarter. We can't be like this. That's kind of a key plot point, isn't it?
Brilliant. Yeah, of course yeah, of course. It's something, funnily enough. I mean, like Terry Pratchett satirizes this in his book Carpe Jugulum, which is about vampires in the Discworld. And it's about like a group of vampires, like they're like postmodern vampires, they're younger vampires, and they learn that the only reason that like holy symbols work on vampires is because they believe it does.
Okay.
So they condition themselves to like realize that they're just squiggly lines or they're just like two sticks together. So they don't see the holy symbol, right? And that
Yes.
they sort of like condition themselves into not being vulnerable to these things. It's kind of funny, you know?
I mean, I cannot remember which one it was, but there's some sort of tongue-in-cheek vampire film from the last 20 years where
Uh-huh.
someone does the cross and the vampire's like, yeah, sorry, I was Jewish when I was alive. That ain't gonna work. And I can't remember which it is, but I liked that. I thought that was, yeah.
That's kind of cool, isn't it? It's like, yeah, it doesn't work on me. I'm not, I'm not Christian. I'm not
Yeah.
whatever, you know.
Show him Star of David, it'll probably work, but the
Right.
cross, yeah. Because the other thing, because usually with vampires, there's like an inherent arrogance that Christianity is the right one, which is why the
Yes.
cross works on them, isn't it?
Right. Right.
So to invert that and say no, it works because they believe it.
Yes.
That's smarter.
It's kind of cool, isn't it? It is kind of
Yeah.
cool. I like that. But oh my God, Lex, I'm really sorry. I'm going to have to go relatively soon. I know
No, that's fine. We'll
Batman this
reschedule
evening.
another one. Yeah.
But I tell you, I will make you this solemn vow. The next time we do this, we'll talk about Batman. I'll put this out as an episode, by the way, if you don't
No,
mind,
that's
because
fine.
this is
Yeah,
really good. This is really good. But next time we will talk. I know we've been, we will talk about Batman. Yeah.
Have you read the metaphysical Batmans I lent you? Have you read
Love them.
Yeah, good.
Love them.
I thought you would. Yeah.
They were some of my favorites. I've got to say, I absolutely loved them.
Good,
That
I
for
thought you
me,
probably would. Yeah.
that for me is like what Batman is for. You know, it's the essence of Batman. I love it when the writers like they understand like the metaphor. That Batman isn't like quite a solid thing, that he operates in this like abstract level of ideas.
No, that's kind of, I'm got to save it for the actual podcast, but that's kind of the whole point of his character. He doesn't have physical power. His power comes from the fact that the way he is done in those books I lent you, that is how the criminal underworld sees him. They don't see a guy in a suit. They see this terrifying otherworldly thing.
Mhm.
And that is kind of key to the character.
Yeah,
So,
I just, and when the writers are really allowed to go nuts with that,
yeah.
I mean, they go nuts, don't they? I mean, like the invention, the raw invention, it's something actually that the Batman comics do, I would say, better than any other superhero comic. It works. There's something about the setting and the ethos of Batman where it is playing with ideas more than anything.
Yeah.
It works.
Yeah, definitely.
It just slots together so beautifully.
Another couple of books to lend you, one of which is a Batman one, but there's one which is a Dracula book, which is the Universal Studios have started doing like hardcover graphic novels of the classic stories. But I've got the Dracula one, and the artwork is
it good?
Beautiful, isn't it? Yeah, I think you'll love it. I just sit staring at the pages sometimes. Yeah, I'll get that to you. But it's
I'm a sucker for a good, just a good aesthetic experience, quite frankly.
Too.
So,
but there is a beautiful picture of the castle, which I've visited myself in November. Actually, the Dracula's castle.
Oh, it's brilliant.
Yeah, do you know what? I was expecting that to be tackier than it was.
Yeah, that would be my feeling as well. Was it good? Was it actually interesting? Yeah.
Because the thing is, right, they don't. I learned this on that tour to Bucharest. They don't know. Okay, right. There is a genuine history with Vlad Tepes in that castle. Okay, so the reason that is called Bran Castle, that is called Dracula's Castle, is because what's his name? Bram Stoker went to Bucharest when he was planning to write Dracula, saw a castle and wrote it into the book and said, that's where I'm having him live. Okay. But people don't know specifically which castle it was.
Oh.
But there's two which they've narrowed it down to. Okay. Bran Castle and another one, the name of which escapes me. The reason Bucharest sort of tourism board has settled on Bran Castle for decades and decades now is because Vladimir Tepes actually lived there at one point.
Oh, so there's an intersection.
There is an actual cross-section. There is no evidence of him ever being at the other one. So they both look like the castle that Bram Stoker described on the edge of a cliff with the spires, blah, blah, blah. But in that one, that does have a connection to Vladimir Tepes. So they've said, right, it's probably that and then.
So
that's why that one is sold as Dracula's Castle, you see.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
No, it's not half as tacky as you think. So I would recommend it as a holiday if anyone's interested.
No, I've always wanted to go actually, and I have a Romanian friend who's been like clamoring for us to go at some point. So yeah, it's definitely on the cards.
So when you're driving up through mountains, it's great because it's just like in the story where you kind of get deeper and deeper into the forest and stuff. Yeah.
Do you expect to see like rings of blue fire off into the distance? And like wolves following
you. Stop halfway and be like, right, I'm not going any further.
Yeah. Like locals to come out with like crosses and things. It's like no further, Brilliant. Absolute. No, I definitely. There's that. I want to do that, and I want to go to the forest of Les Gévaudan in France, which is generally considered to be where most werewolf myths come from.
Okay.
It's the origin of there are werewolf-like myths like throughout mythology and throughout various cultures. But as what we understand as
the Germanic one is the one we generally have in our pop culture, isn't it? Yeah.
It's it originates from like the Middle Ages. The Forest of Les Gévaudan was massive back then.
I wonder if that's where Eggers is going to set his film then.
I hope so. If he does the Beast of Les Gévaudan, yeah, that would be awesome, because it's ultimately it's very likely what happened was you had like bands of bandits in the forest that were killing people, and people made up these myths about it. They don't go through the woods at this particular time. There's a beast. There's a creature.
Did you know that's where Boogeyman myth come from?
Oh yeah.
There literally used to be guys who would hide in the bog and then at night go under people's beds in the tent and then stab them from under the bed and leave.
Yep.
So there's boggy men and they would literally come from under your bed. That's where that comes from.
That's it. I mean, it's very likely that's where the Beast of Les Gévaudan came from. But it used to be populated by loads of wolves. So people made up this myth of a man-wolf, a creature that would change, from man to wolf and all of this nonsense. And that's largely where where a lot of our essential understanding of what a werewolf is come from. The Beast of Les Gévaudan.
I wouldn't be surprised if that's what Eggers goes with then, to be honest.
Oh, that would be it's surprising, but hardly anybody has ever done a film about it.
They always go to the contemporary, don't they?
They do. Or it's like the Wolfman, it's like America, or it's the UK or whatever. France is not one that people go to. But the Beast of Les Gévaudan. Oh yeah, do it. Somebody do it.
It might be. You have to look it up. That might be what he's going with, because he must surely have come across that while he was planning,
There's no doubt he knows about it, because he is that guy, isn't he? He's such a, he's a geek, and he's one of us. He likes
to take things right back like that, doesn't he? Such as The Witch, go right back to the origins of people's fear about this, and as a concept.
Absolutely. In fact, I would be shocked if he doesn't at least include something like it.
Yeah.
I would.
I bet he will.
Brilliant. Well, Lex, next time we'll talk about Batman. Yeah. And I'll put this out as an episode if that's okay.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I'm going to make some notes about things to touch on, because I wanted to reference some stuff from the books that you just read, but I didn't want to do it unless you'd read them. So now that I know that you have.
No, I loved them. I absolutely loved them. I thought that just wonderful stories, just really really well told stories. And very weird. I mean, taking Batman into some really weird, like Lovecraftian places, right?
Yeah, it's some strong stuff. Yeah, very
It
much.
really is. I was like, okay, so like in this universe, at least, like the whole mythology of Batman is much deeper than like, and of Gotham. Like the history of Gotham is so interesting in this universe
There's a lot of
because
layers to that. I'll cover
yeah,
that in the thing, but yeah, there's the Gotham as a Gotham itself is like a character, and
yeah,
there's a mythology to that city, which is it's almost like you could argue that's the only city where Batman could have been birthed. You know,
yes, oh yeah,
that's the thing.
because he's sort of elemental, isn't he? He's like an
Yeah,
archetype in this version of the
it's like
story.
he's a part of that city. It's like
Yeah,
he's like fed by it in a way. Like he
he
couldn't be
has to
doing what he
occur,
does anywhere
doesn't he?
else. Yeah, yeah.
He's
It's like the
part of
city
metaphysics, you know?
needed an avatar, so created an event that gave birth to him. You know, that's
Yeah.
it's like that. Yeah, it's
And
a very
it
interesting
references
concept.
very cleverly, it references the stuff in Arkham Asylum, like that Amadeus Arkham is tapping into,
Yes.
which I thought was very clever. Very clever. I liked that.
Well, that's had like a huge cultural impact. That book. We'll have to go into
Oh,
all of this anyway. Yeah.
that's my favorite Batman. I think Grant Morrison, whatever. Well, I mean, I know he's a sort of problematic guy in many ways, but he is a fucking genius when it comes to that stuff. He gets it, man. And I can't believe he was allowed to do it. I honestly
There was
can't.
a period in the 80s. I don't want to tread on what we're going to be talking about, but there was a period in the 80s for DC where creators were basically allowed to have free reign, and it all went under the banner of what you call Elseworlds, which is this doesn't affect the main continuity, so go nuts, basically.
And that's where Batman's strongest. That's when, in fact, that's where they're all strongest, isn't it? You know, when they put aside when they put aside notions of lore and of backstory and of trying to maintain this like long, confusive history of other stories, when they put that down and they're allowed to just tell the story they want to with the material, that's when it's strongest.
I agree with that. But having said that, I am looking forward to us getting a proper traditional Superman film. Because, I mean, I fucking love Henry Cavill's version, but I'm sick of all like the edgelordy versions of Superman. What if Superman is evil? What if he's corporate? What if he's this? What if he's that? Like, can we just have Superman that's Superman? He saves cats out of trees. He looks after people. He's kind. He's nice. Can we just have that? There's a reason it's been popular for a century. Can we just have that? And by all accounts, it looks like that's what we're getting, and I'm very much looking forward to that. You know,
I think the world could do with a little bit of that.
I agree.
Quite frankly, it would be nice to have that, wouldn't it?
Yes, I feel like it's kind of important at the moment to remember that this is what America used to be.
Yeah,
it's become Homelander.
Also, yeah, and also, by the way, Superman, product of Jewish immigrants, right? It's fighting against, metaphorically, a power fantasy against Nazism and fascism.
And like, all the very old issues of him like beating up corporate, like corrupt corporate bosses, and like talking to kids on streets saying, "Don't you be racist, kids," and all this kind of that's very much a thing. Yeah. I mean, Superman is an illegal immigrant himself.
Yes, I mean he is the immigrant fantasy, isn't he? You know, he is the quintessential immigrant fantasy, and it's really, I mean, that element of him, I really want to see that emphasized. I mean, again, it's kind of necessary at the moment.
But just that hopeful, optimistic, kind. Having that much power, but choosing to be kind.
Choosing to be good, choosing to be decent.
That's kind of important at the moment, I think. I think we'd like to see that. You know, that will be so I am looking forward to seeing that.
Yeah, very much so. Well, Lex, man, is there anything before we go, is there anything you'd like to advertise? Anything you'd like to pimp out there?
Yeah, just my children's book, The Old One and the Sea, has recently been re-released. The previous publisher it was sort of closed their doors, and I've managed to find a new home for it, and that's just come back out. So that's
brilliant.
Pick it up the first time, that is now available. Or if you're a completionist and want every version of every book, then you can get the new sizes of it and all that. But yeah, that's currently out.
If you send me links to that, Lex, I'll put the links below. Yeah.
Yeah, will do.
Excellent. Oh, is that it? Yeah.
That's it at the moment. Yeah, yeah.
Brilliant. Okie dokes. I'll also put, by the way, guys, the links to Lex's Amazon author page, so you can have a look at all of his other published work. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
No problem. No problem. As for myself, same as usual, guys. You can find me knocking about here on Exaggerated Elegy. You can find links to all of my published work over at strangeplaygrounds.com, or if you go to Amazon, type in George Daniel Lee, you'll find my Amazon author page. If you go to Ginger Nuts of Horror, you'll find the ongoing My Life in Horror series, which is my non-fiction material, essays and articles on media and fiction and stuff that's had a significant impact in my life. Latest one was it was something I wrote about David Lynch, because I had to get it out.
Of course, yeah.
Really strange. I don't know about you, but that hit hard.
But it just felt like a loss because of what he represents.
Yeah.
And when we were talking earlier about AI art and how sort of like middle of the road so many things are, someone like David Lynch really stood out as kind of important right now.
Yeah, totally. I had to write it. It's one of those rare pieces of work where like it was swilling around. It was just, and I knew I had to write something,
Yes.
And I'm very pleased with that article. So My Life in Horror, guys. I think I call him the last realist.
Oh, that's a good term. I like that. Yeah.
Because for me, that's what he was. For me, I mean, people call him a surrealist, which, yes, I get that. I totally understand that. It is accurate. But for me, that strange sort of shifting, contradictory, almost dreamlike reality that he paints in his work, that's closer to what reality actually is than anything else I've come across in media, from my perspectives anyway, from my perceptions. And if you go to Arrow Films, by the way, guys, there's the Hellraiser Quartet of Torment UHD and Blu-ray box set, and myself and Kit Power, we're on the Hellbound DVD. We're on the featurette Hell is What They Wanted, which is an hour and 48-minute chat that we engage in about Hellraiser and Clive Barker and queerness in horror and all that gorgeous, lovely stuff. Keep an eye out on Arrow Films for future releases, by the way. There is stuff happening there. There's going to be a couple more releases that we feature on relatively soon. Until next time, Lex, thanks, man. Thank you. I know we didn't get around to Batman this time.
We'll get there.
We will. I promise you. Next time I'll be very disciplined, and we'll talk about Batman. Okay?
Yeah. Fine.
Brilliant. Thank you, and thanks for listening, guys.
Thank you.
Until next time. Bye.